Your Majesty, did you really send the Empress to the enemy camp? He let out a cold, mocking laugh. A few days ago she slapped the noble consort. This is just a scare tactic. But Your Majesty, the Empress has been strung up on the enemy city wall for over 20 days, left to bake under the sun. At those words, a thunderclap seemed to strike him dumb. He sprinted toward the front lines without a second thought. You worthless woman, why hasn't the Emperor of Darchin come yet? Aren't you supposed to be the love of his life? How could he leave you hanging here like this, to rot and die? The Chanyu's roar after roar sent a flicker of emotion across Wen Yang's contorted face. Several lashes of the whip came crashing down, and the stench of blood filled her nostrils once more. When she forced her eyes open, her bloodshot pupils bulged grotesquely. Give it up, she gasped. The one he truly loves is Consort Yuan, not me. The mention of the noble consort sent the Chanyu into a blind rage. He swapped the whip for a serrated steel blade, and with one swift, brutal slash, he aimed straight for Wen Yang's face. A scar, thick and ugly as a centipede, split her cheek open instantly, horrifying, pitiful to behold. She sucked in a sharp breath of pain, her ears ringing with the Chanyu's endless tirade. Why does Xiao Mingyu get to love Yuan? Yuan was my wife. It was Xiao Mingyu who tricked her away from me, who stole her for his palace. I want Xiao Mingyu to bring Yuan here to trade for you. Otherwise, you'll hang on this wall for all eternity, 20 whole days, not a single word of reinforcement, not a trace of hope. When Yang hung suspended from the city wall, exposed to the scorching sun and pouring rain, teetering on the brink of death time and again only to be force-fed medicine by the Chanyu and revived, over and over. The enemy's physicians said her bones were shattered, her tongue crushed. She clung to life by nothing more than a thread, and she clung to that thread, if only to see, if only to know whether Xiao Mingyu's reinforcements would ever come. She was Wen Yang, the last female general of the Wen military clan, a general of the realm, and the Empress of Darchin, the Empress trapped. Her supplies cut off for 20 days, reinforcements delayed indefinitely. Yet this place was no more than 100 li from the imperial rear camp. Even an old woman could have walked that distance in time. Xiao Mingyu, how could you be so heartless? How could you abandon me like this? We knew each other when we were nothing, 20 years of shared memories, of love and loyalty. How did it come to this? 3 more days passed. Once again, the Chanyu appeared before Wen Yang. This time, tears streaked his cold, ruthless face. There is joyous news today, he said. Wen Yang could not even lift her head. She hung there, limp and broken, as if consumed by molten lava. She gasped for breath, straining to hear his words. Joyous news. Could it be reinforcements at last? Then she heard it, the Chanyu's maniacal laughter, laced with agony so raw it bordered on madness. Today Yuan and Xiao Mingyu were wed. You have been branded a traitor to the realm. Your title as Empress has been stripped away. Wen Yang, after all the blood you spilled for Darchin, all the victories you secured, this is how you are repaid, a traitor's name. Your Wen clan has served Darchin loyally for generations. This is the Emperor's reward for your loyalty. Wen Yang, you poor, foolish woman, you are more pitiful than I am. The last faint glimmer of light in her eyes snuffed out, extinguished in an instant. All her hope, all her waiting, nothing but a lie, a phantom. A wave of acrid sweetness surged up from her chest, and she coughed up a mouthful of blood. Splattering it onto the desolate city wall below, a deafening buzz filled her ears. She watched, dazed, as chaos erupted across the crumbling fortress. Horns blared, banners fluttered, and the thunder of approaching armies shook the ground. Reinforcements, at long last, they had come. That blinding imperial yellow, so vivid, so cruel it seared her eyes. Xiao Mingyu had finally arrived, but the imperial edict he brought was not one of rescue. It read, execute Wen Yang, annihilate the enemy forces. The great Jew clashed with the Jurchens. The 800 female warriors of the Wen clan all perished. To the last woman, their leader, Wen Yang, was accused of treason and colluding with the enemy from within, inflicting catastrophic losses upon the great Jew. His Majesty led his army in person, beheading Wen Yang with his own hand to boost the morale of his troops. The imperial guards held the city for 10 days. driving the foreign invaders back 100 li. The Jurchen leader, the Chanyu, personally delivered a letter of surrender, seeking to forge an alliance with the Great Jew and secure a century of peace between the two nations. In tribute, he offered tens of thousands of cattle, sheep, and horses, along with countless treasures of gold, silver, and jade. Border markets were opened between the two realms, fostering trade and prosperity for all. His Majesty returned to the capital in triumph. The people lined the streets, kneeling to welcome him, their cheers shaking the heavens. Long live the Emperor, long live the Emperor, may he live 10,000 years. In the imperial court, all officials bowed in loyal submission, yet on the platform of injustice, the imperial drum of appeal began to thunder. Boom, boom, boom. The drumbeats were deep, resonant, shaking the very foundations of the palace, and standing before it was a frail old woman. Her cloud-like bun was adorned with a glittering golden crown. Her robe a deep blue embroidered with golden cranes dancing amid swirling clouds, each stitch a testament to her noble lineage. As if she were about to spread her wings and soar to the heavens, beneath the wide sleeves of her scholar's robe, her gnarled, wrinkled hands clutched a simple wooden tablet. Carved into the wood were a few solemn characters, "The spirit of my daughter Yang." As she struck the drum, her voice rang out, clear and unyielding, echoing through the silent court. The Wen clan has produced famous generals for generations. My son Wen Mion was the greatest general of the Great Jew. From the day the late emperor ascended the throne, he guarded our borders for 10 long years. When the treacherous Jurchens deceived innocent villagers, Wen Mion risked his life to save them, only to be captured and killed in the enemy camp. My son was a hero. My daughter-in-law was virtuous and resilient. After my son's death, she raised our 4 sons and 1 daughter alone. Our 4 grandsons, Wen Mion, Wen Li, Wen Qin, Wen Lian, served as Grand General, Cavalry General, Chariot General, and Captain of the Guards respectively. All of them gave their lives for our country and our people in countless battles. Before the late Emperor and Empress passed away, they bestowed upon our Wen clan a plaque inscribed with 4 words, "Loyal and Valiant Generals." That plaque hangs high above our ancestral hall, a daily reminder of our duty. Never have we dared to forget it. Though when Yang was young, she was raised by her father and brothers to cherish loyalty to our realm above all else. Now, when Yang has been convicted of treason, her name dragged through the mud, disgracing the honor of our entire clan, her spirit tablet has been barred from our ancestral hall, denied the right to be worshipped alongside her father and brothers for all eternity. This old woman refuses to accept this verdict. I do not understand it, I cannot bear it. Today, I kneel 3 times and kowtow 9 times. I will walk across burning coals, I will roll upon a bed of nails. All I ask is that your Majesty reopen this case, clear the name of the Wen clan, clear the name of Wen Yang, and clear the name of the woman who was once your empress. With that, the old woman dropped her drumstick, picked up her black wooden cane, and walked slowly down the steps of the platform of injustice. Then she knelt, 3 times she knelt, 9 times she kowtowed, her forehead striking the stone floor until it bled. When she reached the path of burning coals, she removed her shoes and socks, and stepped onto the searing embers barefoot. Sizzling sparks flew up around her feet, accompanied by curling wisps of smoke. As the coals glowed brighter and hotter with every step, the path of fire stretched 10 jong long. Yet supported only by her cane, the old woman walked steadily, unflinching, as if it were not flesh and blood touching the flames, but unyielding iron and steel. The unbreakable backbone of the Wen clan now laid bare for all the world to see. Beneath her feet, the palace eunuchs watching from the side were filled with horror and admiration, yet not a single one dared to speak a word of persuasion, because they too refused to believe that the gentle, kind Empress Wen Yang could ever be a traitor to her country. They too yearned for justice, for the Empress, for General Wen Yang to be vindicated, and so, even though their hearts ached for the suffering of the elderly matriarch, the eunuchs could only clench their jaws and stand guard at her side. For every step she took, they moved with her. Onward she walked, across the burning coals, and then onto the bed of nails, her body racked with pain, her spirit unbroken. The moment she completed her ordeal, The eunuchs lifted her onto their shoulders without hesitation and rushed into the imperial court. Silence descended upon the hall, thick and suffocating. Upon the dragon throne, the emperor sat cold and impassive. Wang Shouqing, director of the Ministry of Military Affairs, stepped forward, speaking on behalf of the throne. Matriarch Wen, the case of Wen Yang has already been settled. Your act of striking the imperial drum of appeal is a grave breach of court etiquette. The suffering you have endured today is a minor punishment for your insolence. Return home now, and do not continue to pester the throne with these baseless accusations. The old woman's body was exhausted, but her voice remained strong, ringing out like a bell. But this old woman intends to pester the throne until justice is done. Wang Shouqing narrowed his eyes, his tone laced with a grave warning. If you persist, the punishment will be far more severe than burning coals and beds of nails. The old woman pulled her lips into a sharp, bitter smile. If Wen Yang's crimes are truly proven, if there is undeniable evidence of her guilt, then it means I failed to raise her properly. I deserve to share her fate. Take this old head of mine to comfort the spirits of the 800 female warriors and 80,000 soldiers of the Wen clan who perished. The old woman's unwavering resolve was forged from the countless victories of the Wen clan, from the blood and loyalty that had defined their legacy for generations. This was the courage of a family whose motto was loyalty to the realm. The sons of the Wen clan were heroes, the daughters of the Wen clan were heroines, their courage unmatched by any man. Wen Yang could never have committed treason. Director Wang was a top scholar of the previous dynasty, born of a humble family. He had presided over countless cases involving noble clans, and he bore a deep-seated resentment toward those who believed their family's merits allowed them to flout the law. It was true that the Wen clan had a glorious reputation for loyalty and valor, but it was also an undeniable fact, at least in his eyes, that Wen Yang was ruthless and cruel. The matriarch's actions today were nothing more than a desperate attempt to pressure the emperor and stir up public sentiment. And he had no intention of indulging her. Director Wang strode forward, bowing slightly to Emperor Xiao Mingyu on the dragon throne. Your Majesty, since the matriarch insists on this madness, let us reopen the case. Let us present the evidence once more, for the sake of the court, and for the sake of the entire nation. Xiao Mingyu's expression remained unchanged, cold as ice, his voice, sharp and unfeeling, cut through the silence. Do as Director Wang suggests, I shall listen. But I pray that after today, I will never have to hear the name when spoken in my court again. That single sentence was a death sentence for the entire Wen clan. If the old woman lost this case, the Wen clan would be doomed. If the emperor refused to hear their name, no official would dare to promote a member of the Wen clan ever again. No one would dare to let the Wen clan set foot in the palace or the court ever again. But the matriarch of the Wen clan was not one to back down. I fear I cannot grant your Majesty that wish, she said, her voice steady and proud. The Wen clan, the name Wen, shall be remembered throughout the ages. Xiao Mingyu's handsome brows narrowed slightly, his silent anger radiating outwards, palpable even to Wang Shouqing standing below the throne. A faint smile tugged at the corner of Wang Shouqing's lips. He raised his hand and shouted, Bring forth the evidence. The evidence that proves the Empress Wen Yang colluded with the enemy and betrayed her country. Several eunuchs hurried to the Ministry of Military Affairs, returning moments later with armfuls of documents and objects, all the proof gathered from the battlefield, and with them, they brought a single survivor of the Wen clan's female warriors, Wen Yaroa. When Wen Yaroa saw the old matriarch, a flicker of hope ignited in her haggard, defeated eyes. But when she looked out at the sea of civil and military officials filling the court, that flicker of hope died out just as quickly, snuffed out by the weight of despair. The old matriarch's face remained calm as she looked upon Wen Yaroa, all her emotions locked tightly in her clenched fists. Silence reigned over the hall once more. Wang Shouqing pointed to the pile of evidence, and began to enumerate, one by one, every crime that proved Wen Yang's treason beyond a shadow of a doubt. This border defense map has always been restricted to generals who hold the imperial tiger tally. In the entire court, only two people possess this authority. First, Prince Jingkang, the late emperor's own brother, who rendered distinguished service to the Great Jew, now 75 years old, he has been bedridden for over 3 years. Not only would it be impossible for him to reproduce this map from memory, but even lifting a brush to write would be a Herculean task for the elderly prince. Therefore, there is only one person left who could have made this copy. That person was none other than the Empress of the realm, the sole surviving descendant of the Wen clan, Wen Yang. The map still bears traces of Wen Yang's handwriting. After authentication by Liu Rufeng, the most renowned calligrapher in the land, it has been confirmed beyond doubt to be her genuine script. Matriarch Wen, why not take a look for yourself? Tell us if this handwriting belongs to your beloved granddaughter. Wang Shouqing presented the map, even from several zhong away. The old matriarch recognized Wen Yang's handwriting at a single glance. Her voice grew steady and calm. This is indeed Yang's handwriting. Wang Shouqing let out a cold snort, his face radiating undisguised triumph and confidence. As an empress of high status, Wen Yang could not have been coerced into writing this. Therefore, is there any need to present further witnesses and evidence? Matriarch, this is the imperial court, where we discuss matters of state. Now that you have acknowledged this evidence, is it not time for you to? But the old matriarch cut him off mid-sentence. Everything you say is correct, but I stand by my words. Wen Yang could never have betrayed her country. Utterly stubborn and unrepentant, Wang Shouqing's tone dripped with impatience. The matriarch replied calmly, though this map was drawn by Yang's hand, does that necessarily make it a border defense map? Wang Shouqing froze for a moment. He glanced at the map again. Then stated firmly and unequivocally, of course it is. This is the border defense map. Without a shadow of a doubt, the old matriarch smiled faintly. You just said, Director Wang, that only 2 people in the entire realm have access to the border defense map. Then how did you determine that this map is, in fact, the border defense map? Wang Shouqing frowned slightly. The eyes of the loyal ministers below the throne all fixed on him intently. He said, I visited Prince Jinkang's mansion and obtained his personal confirmation. Then could we ask Prince Jinkang to identify it once more? Naturally, however, given the prince's advanced age, summoning him to the imperial hall would surely be. Prince Jinkang is already here, the old matriarch said. I have invited him personally, and he is waiting outside the hall at this very moment. Director Wang, what does your Majesty think? All the ministers turned their gaze upward. Waiting for the voice of the Son of Heaven to speak, Wang Shouqing's expression darkened repeatedly, a flicker of unease creeping into his heart. After all, when he had visited the prince's mansion earlier, Prince Jinkang had glanced at the map and immediately declared it to be the border defense map. At the time, the prince had seemed rather impatient. If he had misidentified it due to failing eyesight, Wang Shouqing would be left with no leg to stand on. But then Wang Shouqing glanced at the other pieces of evidence beside him, and his resolve steadied once more. This map might have been a careless oversight, but the other items were irrefutable proof, solid as iron. On the throne, Xiao Mingyu's lips twitched slightly, even in his cold, impassive eyes. A hint of impatience flickered. Since Uncle Huang is already present, he must of course be invited to enter. Go and announce him, he ordered. A eunuch hurried off to fetch the prince. Moments later, Prince Jinkang stepped into the imperial hall. Everyone had expected to see him carried in a palanquin, or at least supported by attendants, but never had they imagined he would stride in on his own 2 feet. Looking bright and alert, Prince Jinkang's face was glowing with vitality, not a trace of sickness to be seen. Your humble servant pays homage to your Majesty, he said, his voice deep, resonant, and full of vigor. A stunned silence fell over the entire hall. Wang Shouqing's heart skipped a beat, a surge of alarm coursing through him. Even Xiao Mingyu's cold, detached eyes showed a flicker of surprise. Uncle Huang, you seem to be in excellent spirits, the emperor said. When I visited your mansion recently, I feared you were at death's door. I wonder which divine physician you consulted to work such a miracle. Prince Jinkang sighed deeply, bowing respectfully. Your Majesty, your humble servant is guilty of a heinous crime. What do you mean? Uncle Huang, I deceived your Majesty. I deceived all the ministers of the court. Most of all, I deceived Director Wang. I have wronged Empress Wen, and I have wronged the entire Wen clan. I was never ill at all, it was merely that my love for adventure and pleasure still burns bright in my old age. However, the imperial law stipulates that princes residing in the capital are forbidden to leave the city limits, in order to travel south and sample the beauties and delicacies of Jiangnan. I found a man who bore a 9-point resemblance to me to impersonate me. To avoid detection, I ordered him to feign illness and receive guests in my stead. Never did I imagine that this deception would lead to such a grave injustice. Your Majesty, I am truly guilty. As his words fell, the pieces clicked into place for everyone present. A murmur of disbelief rippled through the crowd, and countless skeptical glances were directed at Wang Shouqing. They convicted someone without even verifying with the rightful authority. The Wen clan has produced loyal generals for generations, they would never commit such a crime. Reopen the case, strip Wang Shouqing of his official rank and investigate him as well. Amidst the whispered discussions around her, the old matriarch's expression remained unchanged. She simply watched, listened, and waited for the moment when Yang's name would be cleared. Wang Shouqing's face burned with shame. As if every pair of eyes upon him were slaps across his cheeks. After decades of loyal service to the court, he never thought his lifelong reputation would be ruined by the whims of a pleasure-seeking prince. He pressed his lips together tightly and said, "Your Highness, we shall set aside your transgressions for now. First, please examine this map once more and confirm, is it truly the border defense map?" Wang Shouqing held out the map to Prince Jingkang, but the prince fell silent. Xiao Mingyu watched the scene unfolding below the throne. For the first time, he found himself desperate to know the truth about this map. When Yang was a ruthless, unforgiving woman, even if she had not betrayed her country, she had committed enough crimes to deserve death 100 times over. And yet, why was he finding himself holding his breath, waiting for the prince's verdict? His lips moved slightly, his voice cutting through the silence of the hall. Uncle Huang's circumstances are special. The late emperor established the rule that princes must not leave the capital to safeguard the stability of the imperial city. However, the political situation today is vastly different from that of the past. This offense shall be punished lightly. Uncle Huang, you have no need to worry. Now, let us return to the trial of Wen Yang's treason case. Prince Jingkang nodded respectfully, bowing his thanks. He stood up straight and examined the map carefully, his eyes scanning every detail. After a long, tense silence, he let out a deep sigh. Every eye in the hall was fixed upon him, breath held in anticipation. Finally, the prince spoke. "This map is genuine." As soon as the words left his mouth, a wave of despair swept through the crowd, accompanied by murmurs of disappointment. Triumph once again flickered across Wang Shouqing's face. The tight string in Xiao Mingyu's heart relaxed slightly, but then Prince Jingkang spoke again, his voice ringing out clearly. "However, this map depicts the border defenses as they were 3 years ago. The current defense arrangements have long since been revised and updated. Therefore, this map, your humble servant would like to ask Director Wang, where did you obtain this map, and who handed it over to you?" Before Wang Shouqing could open his mouth to answer, Wen Yaroa, who had been kneeling silently on the floor, spoke up. "This map was given to Director Wang by the Chanyu, leader of the Jurchen tribe," she said. "The Chanyu claimed that he offered Empress Wen countless treasures of gold and silver, and in exchange, she gave him this map. It was using this map that the Chanyu led his forces straight to the border, trapping the 800 female warriors of the Wen clan and sealing their doom." As she spoke, a cold smile played on her lips. When Yaroa turned her gaze to the old matriarch, her voice steady and clear, every word weighted with meaning. "Matriarch Wen, it was kind of you to come all this way, but it was entirely unnecessary." The old matriarch's eyes narrowed slightly, but she remained silent. When Yaroa continued, her voice rising, filling the entire hall, "I was by Empress Wen's side when she was beheaded. She told me not to resist, not to fight to clear her name, not to argue my innocence," she said. "It was pointless. At first, I did not understand. I did not understand why she would allow herself to be wrongfully accused of treason without defending herself. But then I was thrown into the prison of the Ministry of Military Affairs, and finally, I understood. Because these greedy, self-serving scholars care nothing for the truth, in the imperial court, in the halls of justice. They take their so-called evidence and force it to fit the narrative they have already decided upon, the narrative that condemns those they wish to destroy. The Wen clan has defended this country as military generals for 100 years. Our family's businesses have filled the imperial treasury for generations, with the women of the clan running our commercial enterprises since time immemorial. And yet these men truly believe that the Wens could be bought with a paltry sum of money. Was the position of Empress of the Great Jew not noble enough for her? Were the vast fortunes of the Wen clan's businesses not sufficient? They see only the gold and silver exchanged for a map, but they choose to ignore that the map was 3 years out of date. They choose to ignore where that gold and silver ultimately ended up. The old matriarch pressed her lips together tightly, her body trembling slightly as she listened to Wen Yao's words, tasting the bitterness in every syllable. "My poor child, you have suffered so much." A murmur of shock and realization swept through the crowd once more, the whispers growing louder this time. Gold and silver. Recently, a huge sum of money was donated to the imperial treasury in the name of the Wen clan. Could it be? Empress Wen used an outdated map to fill the imperial treasury. This case, it was tried far too hastily. Wang Shouqing's face darkened once more, once again the target of skeptical glances from every corner of the hall. He took a deep breath, his gaze fixing on Wen Yao and the old matriarch. "There is something I had intended to keep hidden, to spare the Wen clan further shame, to preserve the honor of your family's distinguished military legacy. But now, in light of these developments, I have no choice but to speak the truth. Matriarch Wen, forgive me for the offense." Wang Shouqing straightened his robes, then turned to face the entire court, his voice ringing out with solemn gravity. Though Wen Yang held the exalted position of Empress of the Great Jew, the true hardship of her life, the truth of her character, the suffering she endured, none of you have ever seen it. If she had been favored by the emperor, cherished, protected, then of course she would not have betrayed her country. But the truth is this: our Empress of the Great Jew was already a figurehead in name only. All that remained was for His Majesty to issue an edict confining her to the cold palace. That Wen Yang was out of favor with the emperor was common knowledge throughout the court. She received no affection from the imperial family, she earned no respect from the other concubines of the harem, she was shown no deference by the eunuchs and palace maids. Though she was empress, she lived a life of poverty and hardship, never knowing a single day of joy in the imperial palace. Xiao Mingyu's expression clouded over, his eyes darkening, the tight string in his heart, which had relaxed slightly moments earlier, snapped taut once more. When Yang was out of favor with him, yes, that was true, but when Yang living in poverty, how could that be possible? She was the Empress of the Great Jew, she was the most beloved daughter of the Wen clan. Wang Shouqing lifted the hem of his official robe and knelt down on both knees before the throne. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice earnest, "this is a matter concerning the imperial harem, which I would not normally dare to discuss in the court of state, but today, when my competence as a minister is being called into question, I have no choice but to speak out, to fight for fairness and justice." Xiao Mingyu's hands tightened slightly, his knuckles whitening. Beneath his cold, impassive exterior, a storm of emotions raged in his eyes. "The Empress lived in such misery, and I knew nothing of it," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Speak freely, Director Wang, but if any of your words are proven false..." The warning in his tone was unmistakable. Wang Shouqing frowned slightly, momentarily confused by the emperor's words, but then he understood. If word were to spread that Emperor Xiao Mingyu had treated his own empress with such cruelty, it would be a stain on his reputation as a ruler. With that one sentence, the emperor had cleverly distanced himself from any blame. Truly an emperor for the ages, never a single stain would mar his reputation, no matter the words spoken. In this moment, he felt a twinge of pity for Wen Yang. Pity that she had married into the imperial family, pity that she had become the empress of the realm, and pity that she had been driven down the path of treason, with Emperor Xiao Mingyu's permission. Wang Shouqing turned and laid out the detailed records of Empress Wen's daily expenses in the palace, one by one, his voice ringing out with conviction. In the second year of Mingjia, the winter was bitterly cold, Every concubine in the harem was supplied with the finest golden-threaded charcoal to keep their palaces warm, and quilts of varying quality were distributed according to their ranks, plentiful, provided on demand, yet in Empress Wen's Palace of Peace, the use of charcoal was strictly forbidden. Not a single new cotton quilt was sent, even old, tattered bedding was denied. 2 maids in the Palace of Peace froze to death that winter. As the words fell, the court erupted in an uproar, when Yaroa let out a cold, bitter laugh, tears streaming uncontrollably down her face. One of the 2 maids who had frozen to death was her own younger sister. When she had heard the news of her sister's death, she had refused to believe it. How could she have imagined that a maid serving the Empress herself would freeze to death in the palace, denied even charcoal and a warm quilt? The old matriarch's heart was also seized by a violent shock, for that winter, when Yang had sent someone home to ask for money to bribe the palace officials, her daughter-in-law, heartbroken for her daughter, had saved 1,000 taels of silver to send to the palace, but the old matriarch had stopped her. All her life, she had upheld the honor of loyalty and integrity. She despised such underhanded dealings with money above all else. She had never imagined, never in her wildest dreams imagined that her beloved granddaughter, in the bitter cold of winter, had been denied even a single piece of charcoal to keep warm. The Empress of the Great Jew denied the most basic means of staying warm. Xiao Mingyu's eyes narrowed sharply, his expression a mixture of confusion, disbelief, and something unreadable. But Wang Shouqing's voice continued to ring out in his ears, relentless as a hammer blow. In the 3rd year of Mingjia, a plague of insects descended in spring. The Palace of Peace was severely understaffed, and it was the first to be infested. Empress Wen devised a method of using aromatic herbs to repel the insects, a remedy that quickly became popular throughout the harem. This led to a shortage of mugwort, a key ingredient in the incense, to maintain peace in the harem. Mugwort incense was supplied to every palace except the Palace of Peace. Plagued by insects, Empress Wen fell gravely ill, yet imperial physicians were forbidden from entering the Palace of Peace to treat her. Was it not the height of absurdity, when Yang, the very inventor of the insect-repelling incense, had been the one to suffer the most from the insect plague? Mugwort, how rare could it be? It grew wild in the fields, easily gathered by the armful, and yet this humble herb. The Empress of the Great Jew had been denied even this. If she could not even obtain mugwort, how could she ever hope to have access to imperial physicians, men far more precious and scarce than any herb? Of course, they had been forbidden from treating her. Below the throne, the officials listened, their hearts burning with righteous anger. This was their empress. What crime could she have committed to deserve such unspeakable suffering? This is wrong, a travesty of justice. Even among us officials, we divide half our family fortune with our legal wives. Even a butcher's wife and daughters would not be treated with such cruelty. If His Majesty has no hidden difficulties, then why? Xiao Mingyu listened to the murmurs rising around him, and to Wang Shouqing's ceaseless litany of accusations. Beyond the 2 incidents he had already mentioned, the Palace of Peace had been little more than a cold palace in all but name. No charcoal, no warm quilts, no gold, no silver, no jewels, no fine silks or satins. Even her daily meals had been meager, so much so that she had been forced to grow her own vegetables in the palace just to have enough to eat. How could she have been reduced to such a state? On the dragon throne, Xiao Mingyu's heart was shaken to its very core. Below the throne, the entire court was aghast. The old matriarch's eyes were red with unshed tears, her gaze blazing with a fierce, unyielding light. Having finished his recitation, Wang Shouqing let out a long sigh. Therefore, trapped in such desperate circumstances, how could Wen Yang's heart not have been filled with resentment? It is only natural that she would have strayed down the wrong path. Gold and silver can easily buy the loyalty of a person trapped in the depths of despair. With these words, Wang Shouqing provided a motive for Wen Yang's treason, making her guilt seem all the more convincing. Yet the old matriarch still stood tall and straight, her back unbent. Everything you have said, Director Wang, fills this old woman with profound shame, she said, her voice steady and clear, cutting through the murmurs of the court. As the matriarch of the Wen clan, I was completely unaware that my dearest treasure was enduring such grievances in the imperial harem, but Director Wang, while your words may seem to provide a motive for Wen Yang's treason, you have miscalculated one crucial thing. Wang Shouqing narrowed his eyes sharply. Oh, and what is that? The old matriarch's voice rang out, powerful and unyielding, echoing through the halls of the court. You have miscalculated the resilience of the children of the Wen clan. You have miscalculated the indomitable military spirit that makes us fear no hardship, no suffering. Wen Yang first followed her father onto the battlefield at the age of 13. In the bitter cold of the 12th lunar month, she lay motionless in the snow for hours, just to spy on the enemy's movements. Snow piled 10 inches deep on her body, yet she did not blink an eye. In the scorching heat of June, she marched on foot through the desert alongside her fellow generals, wearing armor weighing dozens of kilograms. She refused to ride a camel or a war horse, saving every drop of water to give to the soldiers who needed it more. I would like to ask you, can the hardships of the imperial harem ever compare to the hardships of a military campaign? Can the sufferings of the palace ever compare to the agony of a battlefield, where rivers of blood flow and men fight hand to hand, tooth and nail? Director Wang has never set foot on a battlefield, but Prince Jingkang has spent a lifetime in the military. Let us ask Prince Jingkang, if any of you dare, what is more bitter? The battlefield, or the imperial harem? Boom! The sound of the old matriarch slamming her cane hard against the floor echoed through the court, silencing every voice in an instant. Wang Shouqing's heart jumped into his throat. Xiao Mingyu's hands tightened into fists, his knuckles turning white. For the first time, a flicker of raw emotion crossed his usually impassive, handsome face. Prince Jingkang let out a deep sigh, his expression a mixture of regret and sorrow. The Wen clan, an entire family of loyal heroes, reduced to such a state, it was enough to break any soldier's heart. He turned his gaze to the imperial throne, where Xiao Mingyu sat high above them, on a platform paved with golden dragons, his nephew ruthless, cruel, unfeeling, a man who would suffer no betrayal, no imperfection. And yet, how could he have handled the case of Wen Yang with such reckless haste? He bowed deeply, his voice ringing out with solemn conviction. Your Majesty, I swear on my life that the entire Wen clan is loyal to the bone. Not a single one of us could ever betray our country. I beg your Majesty to clear Wen Yang's name, to clear the name of the Wen clan, to restore her innocence, so that she may rest in peace, so that her spirit tablet may be placed in the Wen ancestral hall, complete and honored. Following his lead, the civil and military officials standing behind Wang Shouqing all knelt down, prostrating themselves before the throne. Their voices rang out as one, loud and clear. The charges against Wen Yang are unjust. We beg your Majesty to clear her name, to restore the innocence of our Empress. As the words echoed through the court, the tears that had filled the old matriarch's eyes finally spilled over, streaming down her face. This was why Wen Yang deserved the loyalty of the entire court. This was why the Wen clan deserved to stand tall, their name unblemished. This was the indomitable military spirit forged by 100 years of loyal service to the great Jew. Xiao Mingyu looked down at the sea of kneeling officials before him, his lips pressed into a thin, bloodless line, his face turning ashen. Beneath his cold, detached exterior, his throat felt tight, as if blocked by a heavy stone. A mountain of weight pressed down on his heart, making it impossible to breathe. In his eyes, Wen Yang had always been a venomous woman. One who had cruelly harmed the concubines, who had schemed endlessly for his favor. When Wang Shouqing had pronounced her guilty of treason, these very officials had shouted themselves hoarse, crying, "Long live the emperor, wise is our emperor." But now, because the old matriarch sought to overturn the verdict, these same officials were forcing him to clear Wen Yang's name. Director Wang, he said, his voice cold and sharp, his gaze falling on the man kneeling below the throne. What do you think? Wang Shouqing could hear the faint undercurrent of anger in the emperor's tone, even through the oppressive silence of the court. He pressed his lips together tightly, bowing his head. Your Majesty, I believe it would be unwise. Xiao Mingyu narrowed his eyes slightly, a cold glint in his gaze. Oh, but now all my officials believe Wen Yang to be innocent. What do you suggest I do? Director Wang, Your Majesty, wait. Allow me to list all of Wen Yang's crimes in full, then we may make a final decision. Very well, I shall wait. The old matriarch watched everything unfolding before her, her heart turning colder with each passing moment. That man sitting high upon the imperial throne, draped in bright yellow silk. The man who had held the very center of Wen Yang's heart. She still remembered the day when Yang had married him, when she had helped her granddaughter dress for the wedding. She had said, Yang, the imperial harem is a deep, treacherous sea. Once you enter, you may never be able to return home. Are you truly certain? If you say the word, if you say you do not wish to go, I will sacrifice my own life to stop this imperial marriage. What had Wen Yang said in reply? Her face had been radiant with happiness, as she tried to reassure her grandmother. Grandmother, I love him. It has nothing to do with his status. Even if he were a beggar today, I would still love him. I know the harem will be difficult, but he has promised to protect me. He has said that I will be the only one in his life, for all eternity. I believe him. Grandmother, I will be happy, truly. Her earnest, heartfelt words, how absurd they sounded now, less than a year after taking her as his empress. The emperor had taken new concubines into his harem. Within 3 years, the palace was filled with 3,000 beauties. Time and again, when the empire went to war. When Yang, Empress of the Great Jew, had marched out to the battlefield alongside the army, she had returned victorious, time and again, yet never once had she received a single reward. Instead, she had been treated like a concubine confined to the cold palace. This was the man Wen Yang had loved with every fiber of her being, risking her life for him without hesitation. This was the man Wen Yang had married, without a single regret, this time. Wang Shouqing wasted no more time exchanging words with the old matriarch. Instead, he launched into a relentless litany, listing every single crime Wen Yang had supposedly committed, both on the battlefield and in the imperial harem. In the harem, Wen Yang had murdered concubine Li and noble lady Wn, all in a desperate bid for the emperor's favor. Consumed by jealousy of noble consort Yuan, Wen Yang had secretly poisoned her, causing her to miscarry her child. Resenting the empress dowager for protecting noble consort Yuan, Wen Yang had publicly shouted at the dowager, flying into a rage that had left the dowager gravely ill. On the battlefield, setting aside the matter of the border defense map for the moment, Wen Yang had arbitrarily altered the military campaign plan, leading 800 female warriors into Tongyu Valley, where they had been ambushed and captured by the enemy, a devastating blow to the morale of the Great Jew army. Later, after being taken prisoner by the enemy, Wen Yang had betrayed the Great Jew, leaking crucial military intelligence to the Chanyu. If the emperor himself had not led his army in person to the front lines, the Chanyu would surely have seized the entire border region, stripping the Great Jew of a vast swathe of its territory. Below the throne, when Yaowa could no longer hold back her tears or her rage, she threw herself to the ground, banging her head against the stone floor again and again. The sharp, cracking sound echoing through the court, mingled with her screams of despair. When did Empress ever arbitrarily alter the military plan? She consulted with her fellow generals. She led the 800 female warriors to Tongyu Valley to lure the enemy into a trap. Reinforcements were supposed to wait on the mountain tops, to hurl boulders and suppress the enemy with fire arrows. But when the 800 female warriors reached their destination, the reinforcements were nowhere to be seen. They fought with all their might, fighting their way back to the city gates, but the gates remained closed. They held their ground, fighting to the last woman, but in the end, they were defeated, completely annihilated. When our sisters cursed the reinforcements, when they raged against the betrayal from the rear, Empress Wen was the one who comforted them. She told them that she believed in His Majesty. Even at the moment of her death, she still believed in you. But what did you give her in return? False charges, baseless accusations, endless humiliation. With that, she threw back her head and let out a wild, bitter laugh, echoing through the silent court. Wang Shouqing shouted loudly, trying to silence her, but when Yaowa shot Wang Shouqing a fierce glare, then charged straight at him. Head lowered, seeing her coming, Wang Shouqing dodged out of the way at the last moment, and that single dodge sealed her fate. Wen Yaowa's head crashed directly into the golden dragon-carved pillar that held up the palace ceiling. Blood splattered across the floor in an instant. Wen Yaowa lay on the ground, clinging to life by a thread, her dying state stunned everyone present into silence. The old matriarch stumbled forward, ignoring the searing pain in her feet, desperate to cradle Wen Yaowa in her arms. "My child, why would you do this? Why, matriarch, I am not in pain, it is Empress Wen who suffered." Wen Yaowa gasped, her voice fading with each breath. She gave him her life, her faith, her everything. But what did he do to her? "Truly, matriarch, there is no need to fight this anymore. Let Empress Wen bear the name of a venomous woman. Let that man have his victory. The officials here see the truth. The people of this nation know the truth." A gush of blood erupted from Wen Yaowa's throat, soaking the old matriarch's hands crimson. Wang Shouqing's heart jolted with a pang of guilt. Leaving him speechless, Xiao Mingyu narrowed his eyes, the furrows between his brows deepening, his expression unreadable. The old matriarch's eyes were red with unshed tears, her heart shattered into a million pieces, the pain beyond all bearing. She had thought she would be able to bring Wen Yaowa home with her. She was the last surviving female warrior of the Wen clan. All the Wen men were dead. Now, the Wen women were gone too. All gone. Everything was gone, when all her family was dead. What use was a spirit tablet, a monument to honor? Ha 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 ha. The old matriarch laughed, a harsh, bitter sound that echoed through the silent court. She removed the imperial robe bestowed upon her by the late emperor, the symbol of her family's honor, and draped it gently over Wen Yaowa's body. Beneath it, she wore a plain white undergarment, stained with blood from when she had rolled upon the bed of nails earlier that day. The bloodstains covered her body, bright red and vivid against her pale, gaunt face. She straightened her back, then bowed deeply to the emperor on his throne, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. "I have no words to refute Director Wang's accusations, but I have one question to ask of your Majesty. Do you believe her? Do you believe Wen Yang? Do you believe your Empress? Do you believe the woman who once shared your joys and sorrows, who was once the light of your life?" Whether Xiao Mingyu believed Wen Yang or not no longer mattered to the old matriarch. Because she held enough evidence in her hands to dismantle every single one of Wang Shouqing's claims. She knew, for example, that concubine Li had died because of her own adulterous affairs. That noble lady Wan had been beaten to death with wooden planks for her involvement in a dark harem conspiracy. That noble consort Yuan's miscarriage had been the work of scheming villains, not Wen Yang. But the old matriarch chose not to reveal any of these truths in the imperial court. Because Wen Yang had believed it was unnecessary, because what mattered most to Wen Yang was not the truth in the eyes of the world, but whether Xiao Mingyu believed her, whether he had ever truly loved her. Xiao Mingyu's back went rigid with tension. He had ascended the throne at the age of 8. Spending every day and night of his life upon this dragon throne, never once had he felt so utterly tormented, so utterly on edge. Did he believe Wen Yang? What a joke, a venomous, scheming woman. What was there to believe? The old matriarch saw the flicker of mockery at the corner of the emperor's lips, and in that instant, she understood his answer loud and clear. She took a deep, shuddering breath, then raised the wooden spirit tablet she had been clutching and hurled it to the ground with all her strength. The simple wooden tablet shattered into 2 pieces with a sharp crack. "We build spirit tablets for the dead so that their souls may have a place to rest, to receive the offerings of their descendants for eternity," she said, her voice hollow. "I came here today hoping to clear Wen Yang's name, to restore her honor. But now, I see it was all in vain. She once told me she loved the rivers and mountains, the grasslands, the freedom of riding a horse across the open plains. She was never meant to be confined to one place. She deserves to roam the world beyond, far away from the filth and corruption of this court. I have wasted the time of every official here today. I have caused His Majesty nothing but trouble. Prince Jinkang, I thank you for coming here today. Even though I have failed to live up to your expectations, I shall take my leave now." The elderly woman knelt down, then lifted Wen Yaowa's lifeless body onto her shoulders with a Herculean effort. Several officials rushed forward to help her, but none were as quick as Prince Jinkang. The prince moved to take Wen Yaowa's body from her. But the old matriarch refused to let go. Reluctantly, Prince Jinkang could only help her steady the body as she carried it. Under the watchful eyes of the entire court, the old matriarch walked slowly out of the imperial hall. When Yaro's body draped over her shoulders, before she left, she turned back one last time, her voice ringing out clearly. I owe all of you a debt today. I shall repay it when I return home. The farce of the old matriarch's appeal was over. Each official in the court was left with their own thoughts, their hearts heavy with sorrow and regret. Perhaps some wondered what she had meant by that final promise to repay her debt. Xiao Mingyu's back slumped forward, a look of utter defeat crossing his face. Something vital had been torn from his heart, leaving an empty, aching void behind. His eyes remained fixed on the broken spirit tablet lying on the floor. When an empress died, she was entitled to be buried in the imperial mausoleum. But because of Wen Yang's crimes, the officials in charge of the mausoleum had never even considered granting her that honor. Prince Jinkang knelt down, picked up the 2 pieces of the shattered spirit tablet, and tucked them gently into his sleeve. He let out a bitter laugh. Since no one else wants this, I shall take it with me. This girl once raced horses with me. Back then, I did not know who she was. I thought she was just some unknown youth. We made a bet. Whoever lost would have to call the winner ancestor. She was young, but she was an excellent rider. She beat me by a single stride. She laughed it off and forgot about the bet soon after. But I have remembered it all these years. Who would have thought this ancestor title would come true today? I shall take this spirit tablet to the grasslands and bury it there, so that she may ride her horse freely for all eternity. It is the least I can do to fulfill her wish. On the day of the emperor and empress's wedding, Prince Jinkang had asked her teasingly, "Little girl, once you enter the palace, you will never get to ride a horse again." She had smiled brightly and replied, "I do not need to ride a horse. I have to stay by my husband Xiao's side. Besides, I have to guard his empire. Just wait and see, I will become the greatest empress in history, defending this nation for him." Her smile had been so bright, so full of hope and joy. Even during those days in the harem when she had nothing to eat and no warm clothes to wear, she had still found happiness in her life, all because she had him in her heart. He was her faith. The court session was dismissed. The eunuchs had already brought buckets of water and scrubbed the bloodstains from the floor clean. Xiao Mingyu dismissed all his servants and eunuchs, leaving him completely alone in the vast, empty imperial hall. Silence, loneliness, memories began to flood his mind unbidden, one after another. "Xiao Mingyu, I grew these vegetables myself. Taste them. They are delicious." "Xiao Mingyu, why are you going to the noble consort's palace again? You promised to come play with me in the Palace of Peace on the 15th. "Your Majesty, I did not harm the noble consort. How could I ever hurt the woman you love? Your Majesty, I beg you to let me lead the army to the northern border. I will defend our land and keep it safe for you." "Your Majesty, why have the reinforcements not arrived yet?" "Xiao Mingyu, do you truly not believe me?" "Very well, I understand now. In the end, it was all just Wen Yang's wishful thinking." Her bright, smiling face had gradually been clouded by sorrow and pain over the years. "Wen Yang, why have you become like this? Stay away from me. From now on, you are confined to the Palace of Peace. Do not dare to come near me again. From this day forward, all supplies to the Palace of Peace are cut off." Faking illness again. Imperial physicians are not here to cater to Wen Yang's whims. From now on, no imperial physician is allowed to enter the Palace of Peace. "Get out of my sight. You dare ask for reinforcements. Traitor, execute Wen Yang." These cruel, heartless words, they had all come from his own mouth. So why had things between them turned out this way? Your Majesty, a terrible disaster has befallen us." An eunuch burst into the hall, his face ashen with panic. Xiao Mingyu frowned deeply. "What is it? Why are you in such a state?" The eunuch fell to his knees, gasping for breath, his words tumbling out incoherently. Xiao Mingyu took a deep breath, his patience wearing thin. "If you cannot speak clearly, then get out of my sight." But the eunuch refused to leave. He struggled to catch his breath, then blurted out the terrible news. "Your Majesty, the matriarch of the Wen clan, she has hanged herself." The old matriarch had said she would give her own life if she failed to clear Wen Yang's name. She had kept her promise. She had sacrificed her life to atone for what she saw as her failure. Wen Yang's mother, Lu Wanna, took charge of preparing the old matriarch's body for burial. She kept vigil in the ancestral hall for 7 full days before finally arranging the funeral. When Yang's ashes were buried alongside the old matriarch, on the day of the funeral, every official in the court came to pay their respects. Even Wang Shouqing was among them. He knelt before the 2 coffins, kowtowing repeatedly to express his condolences. The second daughter-in-law of the Wen clan had a fiery temper. She shouted that she would drive Wang Shouqing away by force. But the eldest daughter-in-law, Wen Yang's mother, Lu Wanna, was a woman of great dignity and propriety. Not only did she allow Wang Shouqing to pay his respects, but she also invited him and his attendants to stand guard at the funeral until the ceremony was completed. White mourning cloths hung from every corner of the Wen mansion. The stream of mourners never ceased from dawn until dusk. There were countless famous scholars and wealthy merchants. There were countless street vendors and common tradesmen, even the neighbors, the vegetable seller, the butcher, the brother-in-law of the prison guard. They all came to pay their respects. Wang Shouqing watched the endless line of mourners, his heart filled with a flood of emotions. This old matriarch lived a life of honor and glory. She deserves every bit of this respect. She truly does. He had always believed in the truth, in judging cases based solely on evidence. But the case of Wen Yang had left him confused and doubting everything he had ever believed. As he watched the mourners, each one shedding tears as they spoke of their fond memories of the old matriarch, he could not help but wonder. The old matriarch was not a reckless or irrational woman. She would never have come to the court with such a bold appeal if she had not been absolutely certain of Wen Yang's innocence. So, had he been wrong all along? Wang Shouqing began to reflect on his actions. His heart tormented by doubt and guilt, Xiao Mingyu stood staring blankly at the Palace of Peace, a place he had not set foot in for 3 long years. A wooden plaque hung crookedly on the front gate. It read, "Xiao Mingyu and dogs are forbidden to enter." He let out a bitter laugh. Feeling not even the slightest flicker of anger, he took a step forward, intending to enter, then hesitated, frozen in place. Lately, Wen Yang's face had been haunting his every waking moment. Even appearing in his dreams at night, he could not even summon the energy to attend his morning court sessions anymore. When Yang had become his personal demon, he needed to forget her. He had done such a good job of it over the past few years. After all, now that everything was said and done, now that Wen Yang was dead, why could he not stop thinking about her? The Lantern Festival arrived. The Dengyu Tower in the capital was bustling with crowds of people celebrating the festival. Every year at this time, the emperor would leave the palace with his concubines to enjoy the lantern riddles and celebrate with the common people. This year was no exception. The lantern display at the tower was even more magnificent than usual, because it was also noble consort Yuan's birthday. To curry favor with her, the eunuchs had arranged for twice as many lanterns as in previous years. Xiao Mingyu sat in his imperial carriage, gazing out at the colorful sea of lanterns outside, but his heart remained empty and desolate. Noble consort Yuan sat beside him. She tugged gently at his sleeve, her voice soft and sweet as she asked, "Your Majesty, you seem to be troubled by something. Is there anything on your mind?" Xiao Mingyu seemed not to hear her, his eyes not sparing her even a single glance. Snubbed, a Yuan bit her lip in frustration, but forced a smile as she greeted the passing townsfolk. Even before Wen Yang's death, Xiao Mingyu had rarely visited her. After Wen Yang died, he stopped going to the noble consort's palace altogether. The empress's throne had been empty for months. Everyone inside and outside the palace whispered that she would soon be named the new empress, but days turned into weeks, and Xiao Mingyu made no move to bestow the title upon her. A Yuan had no idea what was going on in his mind. Suddenly, the imperial carriage jolted violently. A Yuan let out a startled cry. When the carriage steadied, she saw 2 children kneeling in front of it. Their clothes were tattered and filthy, and each clutched a chipped bowl in their hands. "Your Majesty, it is just 2 ignorant children begging for alms," a servant said. Without hesitation, a Yuan pulled a hairpin from her coiffure and handed it to the maid outside the carriage. "Give this to the children, later." arrange for them to attend a private school. The maid did as she was told, but the two children tossed the golden hairpin to the ground without a second glance. Then, the older child raised her voice, shouting loud enough for everyone to hear, "My name is Nan Huan. This is my little brother Nansha. We two siblings have stopped the emperor's carriage because we have a grievance to air, a grave injustice that must be righted." Xiao Mingyu's gaze finally focused on the two ragged beggar children. A Yuan was a master of reading facial expressions, and she instantly understood the emperor's unspoken curiosity. She took the initiative to ask, her voice gentle and condescending, "What injustice have you come to report?" The two children spoke in unison, their voices ringing out clearly. "The wrongful conviction of General Wen Yang for treason." Xiao Mingyu's face darkened instantly. A Yuan's heart skipped a beat, a surge of alarm coursing through her. Nan Huan pressed on, her voice growing louder and more impassioned. "I have evidence that proves Sister Wen Yang was the kindest, most virtuous person in the entire realm." A Yuan glanced nervously at the crowd gathering around them, then back at Xiao Mingyu's grim expression, before turning her attention back to the children. Even the elderly matriarch Wen failed to produce any evidence to clear her name. What proof could two mere children possibly have? Nan Huan straightened her thin shoulders, her chin held high. "I have no physical evidence, but I have a witness, a living witness." She shot her little brother a meaningful look. Nansha nodded emphatically, his 3-year-old voice soft and childish, yet full of conviction. "I am the witness. When other kids bullied me, Sister Wen Yang bought me cotton candy. She is the nicest person in the world." Nansha's innocent words drew a chuckle from a Yuan and the palace servants and guards carrying the carriage. Nan Huan bit her lip in frustration, then turned and shouted over her shoulder, "All of you, come out now, stop hiding. What are you afraid of?" Slowly, hesitantly, a group of other little beggars emerged from the shadows, their bodies trembling with fear. They clenched their fists, silently repeating to themselves, "Better to die than live with this injustice." Then, in unison, they shouted at the top of their lungs, "We are witnesses. We can prove that Sister Wen Yang was a good person. She would never do anything to harm the people." With that breakthrough, more and more beggar children joined in, their voices swelling into a chorus. Over and over, they chanted the same simple, seemingly insignificant phrase, "We are witnesses. We can prove that Sister Wen Yang was a good person." Their words were empty of any legal weight, but in that moment, they echoed with a power that could not be ignored. A Yuan paid the children no further heed, dismissing them as a nuisance. Xiao Mingyu seemed equally unimpressed. He gestured to his guards to drive the children away, but before the guards could even move, a lantern seller in the crowd dropped to his knees. "I am a witness too," he cried out. "I can testify that General Wen Yang was a good and honorable person." Next, a young girl who sold snacks by the river knelt down, her voice clear and steady. "I am a witness. I can prove that General Wen Yang was a good person." Then came a scholar who wrote letters for a living. An old woman who sold flowers, students in the uniforms of the Imperial Academy. What began with a handful of people soon grew to a dozen, then to dozens, until finally, an entire street was on its knees. Every single person in that crowd knelt before the imperial carriage, chanting the same refrain, their voices merging into a single, thunderous roar. "We are witnesses. We can prove that General Wen Yang was a good person." It was a simple, almost pitifully weak statement, but in that moment, surrounded by thousands of kneeling people, it carried the weight of a nation's conscience. A Yuan bit her lip nervously, her eyes darting to Xiao Mingyu, and to her shock, she saw that his eyes were red-rimmed, glistening with unshed tears. An entire street, more than 100 shops, thousands of vendors and merchants, countless passers-by, boatmen, and tourists, easily 10,000 people in total, all of them on their knees, not because the emperor sat in the carriage before them, but for the woman who was already dead, the empress who had been branded a traitor to her country, General Wen Yang. The Lantern Festival celebrations came to an abrupt halt. In the face of this unprecedented display of public sentiment, Wang Shouqing had no choice but to agree to reopen Wen Yang's case. Several civil officials set up tables with paper, ink, and brushes. The crowd lined up in an orderly fashion. each person stepping forward to recount the countless acts of kindness Wen Yang had performed for them. Sister Wen Yang bought me cotton candy, she is a good person. General Wen Yang found us a teacher and built a school for our village. General Wen Yang gave me the money I needed to travel to the capital and take the imperial examinations. That girl Wen Yang has a heart of gold, she helped me get a divorce and escape from my abusive husband. Wen Yang is a good person. Wen Yang is the best person I have ever known. I do not care about your court case. I know in my heart she would never betray our country. We cannot bear to see her slandered and defamed like this. Wen Yang is my savior. Wang Shouqing watched the never-ending line of people, his heart a tangled mess of emotions, regret, guilt, and a growing sense of dread. Prince Jingkang wandered over, and seeing the scene unfolding before him, he approached Wang Shouqing and struck up a conversation. Director Wang, how have you been lately? Wang Shouqing let out a bitter laugh. Your Highness, have you come to gloat over my misfortune? Surely you jest, I would never wish ill upon you. Director Wang, Prince Jingkang replied, stroking his beard with a hearty chuckle. But his laughter only deepened the bitterness in Wang Shouqing's heart. Prince Jingkang. I think I made a mistake, a terrible mistake, he admitted, his voice heavy with remorse. Oh, mass petitions like this, they only ever happen in times of great turmoil, for heroes who sacrificed everything for their country and people, like Yu Fei, and now, it has happened in our dynasty, because of me. I am overwhelmed with shame, without even realizing it, I have turned the entire nation against me. Prince Jingkang could see the genuine remorse in Wang Shouqing's eyes. And his expression softened. Director Wang, you are not a fool. How could you have never heard of Wen Yang's reputation among the people? He asked gently. Wang Shouqing closed his eyes, racking his brain for any memory of such praise, but came up empty. He shook his head slowly. If I had heard even a whisper of these stories, would I have dared to convict her so hastily? If I had known what the common people truly thought of her, I would have reviewed this case 100 times over. Searching for every possible flaw, Your Highness, I fear my career is over. There is no way back for me now. All he had ever heard about Wen Yang were tales of her cruelty, her malice, her selfishness. He had never cared to involve himself in the petty intrigues of the imperial harem, but those vicious rumors had somehow found their way to his ears. Again and again, it was as if an invisible hand had been guiding him toward this verdict, every step of the way, and yet, all the evidence he had gathered had seemed solid, irrefutable. So where had he gone wrong? What had he missed? Prince Jingkang straightened his back, letting out a long, weary sigh. Now that it has come to this, do you think clearing Wen Yang's name is still the most important thing? When one person says Wen Yang was a good person, we doubt their words. When two people say it, we hesitate. When thousands upon thousands of people say it, we have no choice but to believe the truth. How could anyone possibly fake such kindness, such virtue, in front of an entire nation? Do you know who took care of concubine Li's child after her death? Who arranged for noble Lady Wan's family to be provided for after she died? And what about consort A Yuan's miscarriage? Do you truly believe Wen Yang was responsible for that? Wang Shouqing's eyes widened in shock, his heart sinking like a stone. The realization hit him like a physical blow, leaving him breathless. Do you really think the old matriarch Wen had no evidence to present? She lived her entire life with honor and integrity, her family's reputation meant everything to her. But her granddaughter meant even more. When Wen Yaoa died, the matriarch lost all hope of seeing justice done. She had no reason to fight anymore. Director Wang, only the one who tied the knot can untie it. Go to the palace, go to the Wen mansion, walk among the people, listen to their stories. The truth is out there, you just have to be willing to see it. Prince Jingkang said no more. Instead, he added one final warning. There are people close to His Majesty who have been spreading lies and sowing discord. You should not have turned a blind eye to their schemes. I am leaving now, Director Wang. Choose your next steps wisely. Your future depends on it. With that, Prince Jingkang turned and walked away, leaving Wang Shouqing standing alone in the middle of the crowd. He watched the prince's retreating figure, then glanced at the ever-growing line of people waiting to give their testimonies. What had started as a single street had now doubled in length, stretching as far as the eye could see. The civil officials he had assigned to record the testimonies were trembling, their hands cramping from writing so furiously. There were simply too many stories to tell. A servant approached, struggling to carry 2 large boxes filled with documents. Wang Shouqing stepped forward, opening one of the boxes at random. Inside were page after page of accounts, detailing the smallest, most trivial acts of kindness Wen Yang had performed for the people. Wen Yang helped this common woman find her lost kitten. Wen Yang drove off bandits and saved my mother and children from harm. Our village was devastated by a flood. We survived only because of Wen Yang's relief efforts. Signed, the farmers of Miaohe Town, Jiangnan. The stories from the capital were small, everyday acts of kindness. The stories from the remote countryside were far more dramatic tales of rescue, of sacrifice, of hope restored. Yet even these small, seemingly insignificant acts had brought people from all walks of life to kneel in the streets, demanding justice. And the more dramatic stories had inspired people to travel hundreds of miles, just to share their memories of Wen Yang. Wang Shouqing's heart was tight with a mixture of guilt and resolve. Send for my advisors immediately, he ordered his servant. Tell them to take over from these officials. I am going to the palace, sir. Shall I arrange a carriage for you? No need, stay here and keep order. I will go alone. Yes, sir. Wang Shouqing made his way to the imperial palace, determined to report the unprecedented public outcry to Emperor Xiao Mingyu in person. But when he arrived at the emperor's study, it was empty. The throne hall was also deserted. When he asked the eunuchs where the emperor had gone, they claimed to have no knowledge of his whereabouts. Suddenly, Wang Shouqing lost all desire to deliver his report. Instead, he struck up a conversation with some of the palace maids and guards loitering in the front hall. When Yang had been the empress of the Great Jew, she should have been confined to the palace, bound by protocol and duty. How had she found the time to roam the streets? Performing so many acts of kindness for the common people, one elderly eunuch, who had served the emperor longer than most, let out a weary sigh and answered his question. Surely you know the empress was out of favor with His Majesty, Director Wang. He had not set foot in the Palace of Peace for years. She had a strained relationship with the Empress Dowager, and she kept her distance from the other concubines. But the Empress was a skilled martial artist. Climbing over a palace wall was child's play for her. Even so, it seems almost impossible that she never got caught after all these years. Director Wang, have you forgotten? The guard stationed at the palace gate was Xiao Wu, raised by the Wen family since childhood. Xiao Wu is an honest and loyal man. He would never disobey the young ladies of the Wen clan. Even if he disapproved of her actions, would he really report his own young lady to the higher-ups? With that explanation, Wang Shouqing finally understood, but he still could not wrap his head around one thing. Why was the empress out of favor? She was clever, intelligent, and highly skilled in martial arts. Handling the intrigues of the harem should have been child's play for her. So why did His Majesty? The eunuch let out a long, weary sigh, his eyes filled with undisguised pity. His Majesty and the Empress were deeply in love once. Right after their wedding, His Majesty hated even going to his morning court sessions. He wanted to stay in the Palace of Peace with her every single day. But everything changed after noble consort Yuan entered the palace. Our Empress was perfect in every way except for one thing. She was extremely jealous. She simply could not tolerate consort Yuan. You mean the Empress believed in that new-fashioned idea of monogamy? That she demanded His Majesty be faithful to her alone for the rest of his life? That's exactly it. For a girl from the Wen clan, if she had married an ordinary man, such a request would not have been unreasonable. But she was marrying His Majesty, the Son of Heaven. How could he possibly give up having multiple concubines? How could he? Xiao Mingyu had thought the same thing back then. When Wen Yang first married him, she had said to him earnestly, "The man I love must belong to me and me alone for the rest of his life. Xiao Mingyu, I don't care who you are, I love you, and you love me. If we are truly in love, there can be no infidelity. If you ever betray me, I will never speak to you again." He had smiled and replied, "I promise." Part of him had meant it sincerely. He truly adored her. But another part of him had dismissed it as nothing more than romantic talk between a man and a woman, not to be taken literally. Besides, Wen Yang had not even known his true identity back then. If she had known she was marrying the emperor of the Great Jew, he was certain she would have changed her mind. Take his own sisters, for example. The princesses who had married into noble families could order their husbands around as they pleased, but those who had married powerful princes had to bow to their husbands' authority. In this world, was there any powerful prince or nobleman who did not have multiple wives and concubines? No. Not a single one. And as the emperor, how could he possibly be expected to have only one woman? When Wen Yang entered the palace, the harem already housed 3 high-ranking consorts and countless lesser nobles. At the time, she had shown a hint of displeasure, but she had quickly gotten over it. The newlyweds were inseparable, as affectionate as glue. Xiao Mingyu had been so infatuated with her that he had wanted to skip his morning court sessions every day, losing himself in her embrace. Wen Yang was brilliant, she could read court documents and understand the complexities of court politics. When they were together, they did not just talk about poetry and romance, they also discussed matters of state. Of course, they occasionally sparred with each other as well. Wen Yang was an exceptional martial artist, but she always held back a little when fighting him, letting him save face. At first, everything between them had been perfect. Then consort a Yuan had entered the palace and everything had changed. A Yuan was a gift from mother. But I promise you, no matter what happens, you will always be the one I love the most, he had told Wen Yang. Back then, they had been so close that they had called each other by their given names, dropping all formalities. In Wen Yang's presence, Xiao Mingyu had not felt like an emperor, just an ordinary man in love with his wife. But after a Yuan's arrival, Wen Yang had made things difficult for the new consort at every turn, and that had given him the perfect excuse to blame her. Wen Yang, is this the so-called honor and integrity you claim to uphold, framing a Yuan, bullying the other concubines, trying to monopolize my affection? Take a good look at yourself. You are nothing but a jealous, petty woman. Do you even deserve to be my empress? At first, he had been the one to break his promise, the one who owed her an apology. But after her misdeeds, he had convinced himself that he was the one being magnanimous by tolerating her behavior. Surely that made them even now, he had thought. He would scold her, then apologize and shower her with gifts. They would go back to the way they used to be, he was certain of it. But when Yang had refused to play along, she had refused to see him, refused to let him set foot in the Palace of Peace. Even when he had forced his way in, she had sent him away, claiming she was busy praying and reading scriptures. The Empress Dowager had said to him, "Women like her cannot be spoiled. This is all your fault, you coddled her too much. Mark my words. My son, you need to spread your affection around. A harem thrives when the emperor's favor is shared equally among his concubines. The empress thinks she can wrap you around her little finger just because she is young and beautiful. If you ignore her for a year or two, she will come crawling back to you soon enough. A woman's youth is fleeting, she will learn her place eventually." The Empress Dowager had fought her way to the top of the harem. She knew women's hearts better than anyone, and she knew exactly how to manipulate her son's emotions. Xiao Mingyu had let his anger toward Wen Yang fester, refusing to back down. If Wen Yang did not want to see him, then fine, he would not go to her. Sooner or later, she would be the one to apologize and beg for his forgiveness. He had waited and waited. 3 long years had passed. In those 3 years, his heart had turned as hard and cold as stone. He had passed by the Palace of Peace several times, and each time, he had heard laughter coming from within. When Yang was perfectly happy without him. Occasionally, he had heard rumors that she had snuck out of the palace, finding new amusements in the city beyond the walls. It was said that the game of mahjong had first been invented in the Palace of Peace. She had done so many things outside the palace walls. At first, he had been curious, itching to hear about her latest adventures, but as time went on and state affairs kept him busy, he had stopped caring. When Yang had become nothing more than a stranger living in his palace, they had had no contact with each other at all. Even when she had gone to the battlefield several times, it had been at the recommendation of the loyal ministers in the court, not because he had asked her to go. Every time they had seen each other in the throne hall, she had never even glanced in his direction. In Wen Yang's heart, he supposed he had no place left at all. Inside the Palace of Peace, Two maids, Chunhua and Chuyue, stood trembling, waiting on him hand and foot. The teacup in front of him had been refilled from cold to hot 5 times. 3 different kinds of pastries had been served. But Xiao Mingyu had not touched a single drop of tea or a single bite of pastry. He stayed there until midnight. Finally, he rose to leave the Palace of Peace. One last time, he glanced at the wooden sign hanging crookedly by the wall. The words on it seemed to burn into his eyes. Xiao Mingyu and dogs are forbidden to enter. Once again, his eyes stung with tears he refused to shed. The rain fell in torrents in the 6th lunar month. By the time the ministers arrived at the palace for the morning court session, their robes were soaked through, their shoes filled with water. Minister Liu spotted Wang Shouqing and his attendants struggling to carry 5 or 6 large wooden boxes into the throne hall, and he hurried over to help. Director Wang, are these the testimonies from the people? Yes, we must not let them get wet. Collecting all these documents took my officials and advisors countless hours of work. Minister Liu, please use your robe to shield them from the rain. Of course, of course. Minister Liu quickly called over several strong military officers to help carry the boxes into the hall. Inside the throne hall, everyone was gasping for breath, their clothes dripping water onto the floor. Some ministers quietly removed their shoes, pouring out the water that had collected inside. The eunuchs, ever quick-witted, brought out cotton towels for the ministers to dry themselves off. Court etiquette was of the utmost importance. Some ministers dared not remove their wet robes, even though they were shivering with cold. Others had been smarter. They had wrapped their official robes in oilcloth bags, protecting them from the rain, and changed into them only after entering the palace. The floor of the hall was damp, so the eunuchs mopped it repeatedly. Once everyone had dried off and taken their places, they waited for the emperor to arrive, but after a long time, there was still no sign of Xiao Mingyu. With nothing else to do, Minister Liu turned to Wang Shouqing and asked, Director Wang, what do you plan to say to His Majesty about all this? Wang Shouqing took a deep breath, his expression grim. I will tell him the truth, nothing but the truth. And what is the truth? That you made a mistake in your judgment, that you wrongfully convicted the empress. Wang Shouqing shook his head slowly. The evidence I collected no longer holds any weight in the face of these testimonies. These boxes are filled with the genuine, heartfelt words of thousands of people. For what I have done to Wen Yang, I fear the only way to atone for my sins is with my own life. Minister Liu was shocked. Director Wang, that is not necessary. It is absolutely necessary. Wang Shouqing interrupted him, his voice cracking with emotion. Look around you, old friend. You are the only one in this entire court who is still willing to speak to me. Once the other ministers start accusing me in front of His Majesty, I will be lucky if I do not end up beheaded by the end of autumn. Minister Liu's heart went out to him. But you were only following His Majesty's orders in this case. Yes, His Majesty guided me toward this verdict every step of the way, but heaven only knows what was going through his mind at the time. I just regret that I will die before I have had a chance to truly serve my country. If I had a choice, I would rather die on the battlefield like our late empress, loved and revered by the people. But I suppose I should count myself lucky if I do not end up being spat on by the entire nation. Tears welled up in Wang Shouqing's eyes, and he blinked rapidly, trying to hold them back. Life was never fair, after all. Wang Shouqing was convinced that this would be his last day alive. But something strange happened. Xiao Mingyu, who had never once missed a morning court session in his life, was absent that day, and once he had missed one, he had missed another. For an entire month, the once diligent emperor did not show his face to the ministers even once. This made the ministers anxious beyond measure, but it was the Empress Dowager who was truly beside herself with worry. What has the emperor been doing these days? She demanded of the eunuch who had been assigned to wait on Xiao Mingyu day and night. The eunuch replied honestly, His Majesty has been staying in the Palace of Peace every day. Your Majesty, he reads, writes, and reviews court documents. He does not seem to be ill, but he often talks to himself. The Empress Dowager frowned deeply, her fingernails adorned with long, decorative guards digging into the palms of her hands. Her eyes were filled with confusion and suspicion. What could he possibly have to say to himself? He must be giving orders to the maids around him. You old fool, stop talking nonsense. If an emperor stopped attending court, it meant only one of two things: he was either wallowing in decadence, or he was gravely ill. Neither scenario boded well for the great Jew, especially since the young emperor had no heirs. If he were to die without leaving a son behind, the dynasty would be thrown into chaos. Several powerful feudal lords outside the capital had long been dissatisfied with Xiao Mingyu's rule. If word of his strange behavior got out, who knew what rebellions might break out? The Empress Dowager was a woman of great foresight and ruthlessness. She immediately ordered the eunuch's tongue to be cut out, to serve as a warning to others not to spread rumors about the emperor. Then she went straight to Consort Yuan's palace, once all the attendants had been dismissed. The Empress Dowager asked a Yuan about Xiao Mingyu's condition. A Yuan sighed and shook her head. I do not know what is wrong with His Majesty either, Your Majesty. He stays in the Palace of Peace all day and refuses to come out, but the maids who have been on duty there told me that he has been painting non-stop. Painting? Yes, he only paints one person, the late Empress. A Yuan handed the Empress Dowager a scroll of paper that a palace maid had taken out from inside. This is it. On the rice paper, the figure was rendered vividly and lifelike. When Yang was clad in a suit of armor, mounted on a fine steed radiating valiance and heroism in every line of her posture, the Empress Dowager's brows knit tightly, her face twisting with irritation. Then she shot a reproachful glare at noble consort Yuan and demanded sharply, "Tell me the truth, have you consummated your marriage with His Majesty yet?" Yuan froze, her cheeks flushing crimson in an instant, like the most dazzling cherries in the height of summer. Well, the Empress Dowager pressed her again, her voice sharp. Yuan bit her lip, hanging her head in shame, then shook her head vigorously from side to side like a cattail leaf fan. The Empress Dowager's heart clenched violently with shock and anxiety. "What is the matter with you? It has been so long. His Majesty has visited your palace countless times. How could none of those visits ever lead to anything?" Yuan kept her head bowed, her oval face burning so hot it looked as if it might bleed. She whispered miserably, "Your Majesty, I truly have tried everything. No matter what methods I used, I could never make His Majesty, make him." Her voice trailed off, choked with tears. The Empress Dowager refused to believe her. What man did not crave the pleasures of the flesh? Her son, though not by blood, had been raised by her own hands. It was impossible that he had no interest in women. When Yang first entered the palace, he had been so infatuated that he had wanted to spend every night by her side in the Palace of Peace. You must not have tried hard enough. Did I not send the experienced palace matrons to teach you the ways of pleasing a man? Why did you not learn from them properly? Tears welled up in Yuan's eyes, spilling down her cheeks as she choked out her words, her voice thick with grievance and bitter disappointment. I learned everything those matrons taught me, every single thing. But His Majesty just would not. She had even practiced the lewd, shameless tricks used by courtesans in the brothels in front of the old matrons, using props to perfect her technique, but it had all been in vain, absolutely useless. Chapter 17. The Empress Dowager's eyes widened in stunned disbelief. That cannot be. If he did not do those things with you every time he came to your palace, then what on earth did he do? Yuan wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes with her sleeve, her voice trembling. Every time His Majesty came, he would only stay for a little while before leaving. He would drink some tea, eat a few fruits. He almost never spent the night. I was afraid you would be angry with me, Your Majesty, so I never dared to tell you the truth. She had been too ashamed to speak of it. A noble consort of the great Jew, married into the palace for 3 long years, and still a virgin. The very thought of anyone finding out made her want to die of embarrassment. The frown lines on the Empress Dowager's forehead deepened further. She thought of the endless turmoil that had plagued the harem these past few years, then glanced down at the portrait of Wen Yang in her hands. A flood of long-buried memories came rushing back to her unbidden. Xiao Mingyu's birth mother, Empress De, had drowned herself in the palace lake all those years ago because she had been furious with the late emperor for taking other concubines. The late emperor had doted on Empress De alone, but she had been a fiercely jealous woman, and when he had been forced to take concubines to secure political alliances, she had threatened to take her own life. That woman had valued love and loyalty more than her own life. Empress had been of Hu ethnicity, a people known for their fiery, unyielding temperament. She had never let her status, her country, or her clan ties sway her beliefs. On the very day the late emperor had taken his new concubines, Empress had hanged herself. Her death had haunted the late emperor for the rest of his life, filling him with unending regret. He had loved her deeply. Once, he had even said, "I would trade my entire empire for one smile from her." His subsequent neglect of his royal duties, his listlessness, his eventual decline into terminal illness, all of it had stemmed from his grief over Empress's passing. The Empress Dowager remembered that when Empress died, Xiao Mingyu had been just a young boy, later adopted by her. She had raised him with her own hands. But he had been only a teenager when the late emperor had passed the throne to him. No one had understood why the late emperor, still in his prime, had made such a sudden decision. Everyone had assumed he wanted to train his son early to be a ruler, or that he wanted to step down and enjoy his remaining years as a retired emperor. But on Xiao Mingyu's very first day presiding over court, the late emperor had passed away. Before his death, he had drawn up a special imperial edict, stating that he wished to be buried in the same tomb as Empress De. No other concubines were to be allowed into the imperial mausoleum. Not even she, the reigning Empress Dowager, would be permitted to be buried in the imperial mausoleum after her death. She would have to be interred in a separate tomb. The late emperor's love for Empress De had been nothing short of legendary. Now, the same tragedy seemed to be unfolding all over again with Xiao Mingyu. The Empress Dowager did not dare to think about what might happen next. When Empress De died, she had left behind a son. The late emperor had clung to life, waiting until his son ascended the throne, fearing that his brothers would seize power and harm the boy if he died too soon. But when Yang had left nothing behind, no children, no heirs, if Xiao Mingyu were to lose the will to live, the consequences would be catastrophic. Foreign enemies were still lurking on the borders. Although the Chanyu had signed a peace treaty, his forces had suffered minimal losses in the last war. He could launch another invasion at any moment. And then there were the ambitious feudal lords scattered across the kingdom. If they heard that the emperor was mentally unstable, they would surely raise their armies and march on the capital to seize the throne. The more the Empress Dowager thought about it, the more terrified she became. Without a second thought for a yuan, she summoned her attendants and ordered them to take her to the Palace of Peace at once. She had to stay by Xiao Mingyu's side. She had to protect her emperor at all costs. Stepping out of a yuan's palace, the Empress Dowager quickly instructed the eunuch beside her to summon several trusted ministers to her own quarters. "Tell them to come immediately. I will join them as soon as I have made sure His Majesty is safe. Also, send for Lu Wanna, the eldest daughter-in-law of the Wen clan. Tell her I have urgent matters to discuss with her." Inside the Palace of Peace, the Empress Dowager arrived in a flurry of haste. 3 or 5 palace maids stood guard at the entrance. At the sight of her, they dropped to their knees, prostrating themselves on the ground in fear and respect. The maids exchanged confused glances. Why had the Palace of Peace suddenly become such a popular place? Everyone seemed to be coming here these days. His Majesty visited every day. Noble consort a yuan came occasionally. And now the Empress Dowager herself had arrived. Had not this palace been nothing more than a cold palace just a short while ago? When had it suddenly become the center of attention? Glancing down at the kneeling maids, the Empress Dowager demanded sharply, her voice dripping with displeasure, "Why are you all lingering outside the door? Where is His Majesty?" The head maid replied timidly, "His Majesty is inside the palace. Your Majesty, he said he wanted to be alone to clear his mind, so he ordered us to wait outside the door. He also said he did not wish to be disturbed by anyone." The Empress Dowager's face darkened with anger. She shot the head maid a fierce glare, then strode past her into the palace. Supported by her eunuchs, she searched every corner of the inner chambers, but Xiao Mingyu was nowhere to be found. Panic surged through her. She immediately ordered her eunuchs to search the entire palace, but there was no sign of him anywhere in the Palace of Peace. Only a few portraits of Wen Yang remained in his study. The Empress Dowager clenched her hands into tight fists, her heart pounding with dread. She was truly terrified now. Beneath the city gates, a burly man clad in armor sat at a table, a pair of massive axes resting behind him. He held a large wine jar in both hands, drinking from it in long, deep gulps, his eyes never leaving a small, hidden side door. He had been guarding the palace gates for 4 years. Except for the first year, he had rarely seen Wen Yang, but for the following 3 years, whenever she had been in the imperial capital, she had slipped out of that small door almost every single day. Sometimes she had dressed as a eunuch, sometimes as a palace maid, other times in men's clothing, or in military uniform. She had made all those different outfits with her own hands, so she had told him. Memories flooded his mind, her bright, laughing face, her cheerful voice echoing in his ears. I'm going boating on the lake today. I've invited some lovely young ladies to come with me. Xiao Wu, would you like to join us? It's New Year's Eve. I have to bring some good food and wine for those little beggars. No one should have to go hungry on New Year's. Xiao Wu, did you buy all the fireworks and firecrackers I asked you to? Come on, let's skip work for the day. Let's go have some fun together. Tonight is the day my father and brothers are being buried. I'm sure they're watching over me from heaven, aren't they? Xiao Wu, my mother must be heartbroken again, but I dare not go see her. If she sees me dressed in this men's clothing, she'll only think of my father and brothers. She always says I take after him, not her. None of my brothers looked like him. Last year, I went to see her wearing this outfit. She cried all night long, her eyes were swollen shut. It broke my heart to see her like that. But my mother is a lucky woman. She knows that my father loved only her for his entire life. She tried so hard to stop me from entering the palace back then. I didn't understand why at the time, but now I do. Not every man can be like my father, loyal to one woman for a lifetime. Xiao Wu, do you have a girl you like? Look at you, blushing like that. Of course you do. I'll ask my grandmother to arrange a match for you. You were raised by the Wen clan. Even though you're an adopted son, your status is more than good enough to marry a fine young lady. Which girl is it? Tell me, hurry up and tell me. Wen Yang's bright, smiling face lingered in Xiao Wu's mind, refusing to fade away. All his sorrow and grief were buried deep in his heart, weighing him down like a mountain. He had once thought about throwing everything away, his duty, his loyalty, and taking her away from the palace, away from this gilded prison. But he took another huge gulp of the fiery white wine, the liquid burning his throat as it went down. The harsh, acrid taste made tears well up in his eyes. That small side door would never open again. No one would ever slip out of it again. Calling his name with that cheerful voice, Xiao Wu, he wiped the tears from his eyes with the back of his hand, then rose unsteadily to his feet, preparing to return to his post. But then a sound came from the small door, a faint creak. The door was slowly opening. Xiao Wu froze, his breath catching in his throat. Tears poured down his face as he stared at the door, his heart pounding wildly in his chest. Was he about to hear her voice again? That familiar cry of Xiao Wu. A figure emerged from the door, wearing a high bun tied with a blue ribbon, clad in a pale blue robe, men's clothing. For a split second, Xiao Wu's heart soared with wild hope. He almost thought Wen Yang had come back to him. She had loved the color pale blue. She had loved wearing men's blue robes more than anything. She had always carried a paper fan in her hand, saying with a grin, "A fan makes me look even more dashing and heroic, don't you think?" She had even learned a few martial arts moves using the fan as a weapon, and she had gotten hurt more than once, trying to show off her skills, as she had always laughed it off afterward. Guess I overdid it with the showboating this time. Wen Yang, is it really you? Have you come back to me? If you're really back, name your wish. I'll give you anything you want. The crispy rice cakes from outside the city gates, the candied fruits from the southern market, the snacks from the northern district, I'll buy them all for you. Just say the word. A soft, muffled sob broke the silence. Xiao Wu's eyes finally focused, and he saw the figure clearly. It was not Wen Yang. Why was it not her? Why was it Xiao Mingyu? Rage erupted in Xiao Wu's chest, hot and fierce. He roared at the top of his lungs, his voice shaking with fury. Xiao Mingyu, take those clothes off, right now. Those are Wen Yang's clothes. You have no right to wear them, none at all. With a deafening roar, he grabbed the pair of massive axes behind him without hesitation, then leaped into the air, swinging one of the axes down at Xiao Mingyu with all his strength, determined to split him in two. Xiao Mingyu's brows furrowed slightly. Instinctively, he raised the paper fan in his hand to block the blow, and the moment Xiao Wu saw that fan, his eyes widening in recognition, he jerked the axe to the side at the last second. The blade slammed into the table beside them with a thunderous crash, splitting the solid wood in half. The wooden table split cleanly in two on impact. Xiao Wu's momentum was unstoppable. Even in missing his mark, he still managed to graze Xiao Mingyu, sending the paper fan flying from his grasp. As the fan spun through the air, Xiao Wu, who valued his axes more than his own life, dropped them without a second thought, diving forward to catch the fan before it hit the ground. He cradled the fan gently in his palms, tears streaming down his face in torrents. Xiao Mingyu's throat tightened, his eyes stinging with a sudden, unfamiliar ache. This was Xiao Wu, the man who had turned down countless promotions to high military rank, choosing instead to stand guard at this lowly gate. He had stayed here, guarding this tiny side door. No, more precisely, he had stayed here to guard someone, to guard Wen Yang. This was why Wen Yang had been able to slip out of the palace so easily all these years. Xiao Wu had stood watch for her, silently and faithfully, for 3 long years. Watching him hold the fan as if it were the most precious treasure in the world, as if it were Wen Yang herself. Xiao Mingyu's eyes reddened with a surge of emotion he could not name. Xiao Wu was nothing but a brute of a soldier. How dare he grieve for his empress? He pressed his lips together, then reached out to snatch the fan from Xiao Wu's hands. Xiao Mingyu moved with the speed of lightning, grabbing one end of the fan and yanking it hard, determined to take it back. Xiao Wu's eyes widened in shock. He reacted instantly, clamping down on the other end of the fan, refusing to let go. Xiao Wu, know your place. Look who you are defying. Xiao Wu was a subject. Xiao Mingyu was the son of heaven, and yet, at this moment, Xiao Wu was daring to fight the emperor for a mere paper fan. Xiao Wu let out a cold, mocking laugh. I don't care who you are. This fan belongs to a Yang. Filthy men like you are not worthy to touch anything that belongs to her. He had called the emperor filthy. Rage flared in Xiao Mingyu's chest. He channeled his inner energy, striking out at Xiao Wu with a powerful palm. Xiao Wu dodged nimbly, his large, armored frame moving with surprising agility as he flipped backward. Never once loosening his grip on the fan, Xiao Mingyu gritted his teeth, every strike infused with brutal force, as if he meant to shatter Xiao Wu's bones. Xiao Wu felt the heat of Xiao Mingyu's rage searing through the fan. He also realized that if this tug-of-war continued, the fan, Wen Yang's favorite fan, the one she had painted with singing birds, would be torn to shreds. Tears welled up in Xiao Wu's eyes again, his heart twisting with pain. He could not bear to let that happen. That split second of hesitation was all Xiao Mingyu needed. Xiao Wu released his grip. The fan fell firmly into Xiao Mingyu's hands. Xiao Wu stood there, his eyes bloodshot with hatred for Xiao Mingyu and an indescribable, profound sorrow. He grieved for the fan, but more than that, he grieved for Wen Yang. To him, that fan was Wen Yang. That was why he had let go. He would rather surrender than let any harm come to it. The realization hit Xiao Mingyu like a bolt of lightning, leaving his mind reeling, his ears ringing with a deafening roar. Why do you call her a Yang? Xiao Wu had never expected him to ask that question. He glanced at Xiao Mingyu, and in that single look, he saw the shock written plainly across the emperor's face. Xiao Wu burst out laughing, a harsh, bitter sound, filled with grief for Wen Yang. Ha 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 ha, I've called her a Yang for over 10 years. I never stopped to think why. Maybe it's because we grew up together. And she told me to call her that the very first day we met. Or maybe it's because her father, her brothers, her mother, her grandmother, they all called her a Yang. So I did too. Xiao Mingyu, it's just a name, and yet you're losing your mind over it. I always thought you never loved her, but now I see I was wrong. You loved her. You just never had the courage to admit it. A Yang, look at him. Look at the man who promised you a lifetime of faithfulness. Now that you're gone, he's finally starting to regret it. He's just like his father. He didn't cherish what he had when it mattered. Now that you're nothing but a pile of ashes, he's drowning in remorse. But what good is regret now? It won't bring you back. Yang, you were right. No man in this world can compare to the men of the Wen clan. Your mother waited for your father her entire life, and your father loved only her until the day he died. That is true love. Men like Xiao Mingyu, they don't deserve your love. Xiao Wu roared his words to the heavens, as if pouring out all the grief and anger that had been pent up in his heart for years. Each word was like a knife, twisting sharply in Xiao Mingyu's chest. Xiao Mingyu, tell me, why did you have to execute Wen Yang? You loved her. So why didn't you send reinforcements to the 800 female soldiers of the Wen clan? Why were those 800 women your enemies? Did you have to send them to their deaths like that? Each of them was someone's daughter, someone's beloved child. How could you throw their lives away so recklessly, letting them be slaughtered and defiled by the enemy? As he spoke, Xiao Wu's rage flared up again, hotter and more intense than before. You didn't send any reinforcements when Yang fought tooth and nail to survive. But in the end, you cut off her head. She was your wife, the woman you swore to protect for the rest of your life. How could you? How dare you? Xiao Mingyu pressed his lips together tightly, his mind flashing back to that fateful day in the military camp, when he had plotted the strategy with General Yarojiang. Yarojiang had proposed using the 800 female soldiers as bait, luring the enemy into Tongyu Valley where they would be ambushed and annihilated. But Yarojiang had betrayed them. All the reinforcements had turned traitor, defecting to the Jurchen tribe. They had been caught off guard, trapped behind enemy lines. The elite imperial forest guards he had secretly dispatched from the palace had arrived too late. He had been forced to suppress the news of Yarojiang's betrayal, afraid that if the feudal lords learned the capital was undefended, they would rise up in rebellion. But the fact remained, the reinforcements had become traitors. Hundreds of soldiers had witnessed it with their own eyes. There was no way to cover it up, so he had resorted to a desperate ruse, letting Wen Yang take the blame for the treason. At the time, he had thought it was the best way to protect her. After all, she had once saved the Chanyu's life. The Chanyu had fought against him on the battlefield, but he had always seemed like a man of honor, someone who valued loyalty and gratitude. Surely he would spare Wen Yang's life. But he had misjudged the Chanyu's character. The Jurchen king had indeed spared her life, but he had also used her as a weapon to strike at Xiao Mingyu's weakest point. He had ordered Wen Yang's execution, forcing Xiao Mingyu to watch as her head fell to the ground, forcing him to watch her die right before his eyes. The sight of her blood spraying across the battlefield, staining the sky red, the stench of blood filling his nostrils, the warm, sticky feel of it on his hands, it had haunted him like a nightmare ever since. Haunted him every single day. Inside the Empress Dowager's palace, several loyal ministers waited anxiously. Minister Liu paced back and forth, his face etched with worry. Wang Shouqing sat quietly on the side, sipping his tea, his expression unreadable. Censor Fang tapped his fingers lightly on the armrest of his chair. He opened his eyes, which he had been keeping closed, and glanced at the agitated Minister Liu, unable to resist chiding him. Minister Liu, you're not a young man anymore. Must you still pace around like a caged animal? It's exhausting just watching you. Minister Liu wiped the sweat from his forehead, but his pacing never stopped. I can't be as calm as you two. The Empress Dowager summoned us here for a reason, and it must be about His Majesty. I've been thinking about it these past few days, and I've realized something. His Majesty hasn't been right since he returned from the battlefield. Any other ruler, any other general, would have rested for months after such a grueling campaign, but not him. He threw himself into work the moment he stepped back into the palace, day and night, as if he was trying to run from something. He didn't sleep, didn't eat properly, he worked himself to the bone. And then the Wen Yang case broke. He sat on that dragon throne for days on end, without rest. Not even an owl could survive that kind of exhaustion. Now he hasn't shown up for court in over 30 days. The problem is staring us in the face. Our emperor is gravely ill, and it's not a physical illness, it's in his heart. Wang Shouqing and Censor Fang exchanged a glance, both nodding in silent agreement. Wang Shouqing took another sip of his tea, then asked, his voice grave, the Empress Dowager summoned us here to find a solution. Do either of you have any ideas? Xianxia Fang stretched his aching shoulders and yawned loudly. No, his lazy, indifferent reply only served to make Minister Liu even more anxious. Even if you're planning to retire soon, you can't be this careless. You're a minister who has served 3 emperors. Act like it. Xianxia Fang clicked his tongue, looking amused. Then what brilliant plan do you have, Minister Liu? Minister Liu was left speechless, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. If he had a plan, he wouldn't be pacing around like this. The 2 men turned their eyes to Wang Shouqing, their last hope. What about you, Director Wang? Wang Shouqing let out a long, weary sigh. I have a plan, but it won't be easy to execute. We'll just have to wait and see. Madam Wen has arrived. A loud announcement echoed from outside the palace gates. Lu Wanna entered, escorted by a group of palace maids. Lu Wanna, the eldest daughter-in-law of the Wen clan, was the daughter of the wealthiest merchant in Jiangnan. At the old matriarch's funeral, she had been dressed head to toe in plain white mourning clothes, no jewelry, no ornaments, and yet her delicate, pale features had shone with a quiet, ethereal beauty. Today, coming to the palace to meet the Empress Dowager, she was no less modestly dressed. She wore no silk robes, no jade hairpins, no golden ornaments, nothing that would make a sound as she moved, but this simplicity only served to highlight her natural grace and elegance. Her slender waist was as supple as a willow branch, her beauty was like snow falling over the misty rivers of Jiangnan, delicate and pure, yet radiant with quiet strength. She walked with slow, graceful steps, every movement a picture of refined elegance. The other 2 ministers, each lost in their own thoughts, could not help but steal a few glances at her. Wang Shouqing, who had met her before at the funeral, nodded at her in greeting, and then they waited for the Empress Dowager to arrive. 2 more rounds of tea were served, 2 more plates of fruit were brought out. The palace maids and eunuchs stood silently by, waiting on them hand and foot, the air thick with tension. Finally, as the sun began to set in the west, painting the sky in hues of orange and red, the Empress Dowager arrived. She came in a flurry of haste, her face pale with panic, her hair ornaments askew, her usual regal composure nowhere to be seen. Gone was the imposing, unshakable Empress Dowager. In her place stood a woman terrified out of her wits. Gentlemen, my lords, she gasped, her voice trembling with fear. I apologize for keeping you waiting, but I'm desperate. His Majesty is missing. He disappeared at noon. We've searched every corner of the palace, every hall, every courtyard, every room, but there's no sign of him anywhere. I'm afraid, I'm so afraid that he's done something foolish, something like what the late emperor did all those years ago. The 4 men inside the palace froze, their faces draining of color. They had never imagined things would come to this. The Empress Dowager was completely at a loss. Before speaking to the 4 of them, she had carefully considered whether she should reveal this dire news. Wang Shouqing was a trusted confidant personally promoted by Xiao Mingyu. He was certainly reliable. Xianxia Fang was a veteran minister who had served 3 emperors. He had already been in the imperial court when the late emperor's father was still on the throne. A man who had survived 3 reigns must have his reasons. He knew perfectly well what to say and what to keep to himself. Although Minister Liu had a fiery temper, he and Wang Shouqing were former classmates, and his heart was in the right place. One could tell from his constant talk of loyalty to the emperor and love for the country. The only wild card was probably Lu Wanna. This woman was the daughter of the wealthiest merchant in Jiangnan and the eldest daughter-in-law of the Wen clan. Now she was a widow. Her husband, parents-in-law, sons, and daughters were all gone, leaving her to manage the entire household alone. But earlier, when she had watched Lu Wanna standing outside the door, she had studied her for a long time. On the surface, she looked like a delicate, gentle woman, but the calm, cool glint in her eyes told the Empress Dowager that Lu Wanna was a woman of considerable means and resolve. Otherwise, how could the great Wen clan, with almost all its male members gone, still stand firm and unshaken in the capital? This capital city, though seemingly prosperous, was a hotbed of hidden currents and intrigues. The Wen clan's vast wealth and influence were a tempting piece of meat that countless people were eyeing greedily. After listening to the Empress Dowager's words, Lu Wanna stood quietly to the side, her face betraying no emotion. Her silence only served to make the Empress Dowager even more anxious. If we've searched the entire palace and found nothing, then he must have gone outside the palace walls. Finding him outside the palace will be far more difficult, actually. If he's left the palace, that might be for the best. What I fear most is that he hasn't left the palace at all, that he's hiding in some corner of the palace. Having done something foolish, the Empress Dowager's legs went weak with fear. The great Zhou dynasty must not end like this. We cannot let this news leak. The border is volatile, and those feudal lords are already restless. If any of their spies in the palace or the capital catch wind of His Majesty's strange disappearance, they will surely seize the opportunity to act. We must not panic, no matter what, but His Majesty's absence will inevitably stir up rumors. What are we to do? The news that he hasn't been attending court has already spread. Prince Mingyan is coming tomorrow morning to demand an audience with him to test the waters. What shall we do then? The ministers were all at a loss for words. Aside from finding the emperor, dealing with Prince Mingyan was now an urgent priority. The Empress Dowager glanced again at the calm, composed Lu Wanna standing beside her, lowered her voice, and asked her directly, "Madam Wen, what do you think we should do?" Lu Wanna was slightly taken aback, but quickly regained her composure. She knew that she could no longer remain a bystander in this matter. After a moment's thoughtful silence, she spoke. The disappearance of His Majesty is an extremely serious matter, and Prince Mingyan's impending visit is a formidable challenge, if you will permit me to speak freely. Your Majesty, perhaps we could use a strategy of substituting one person for another. How? How can we substitute someone for the emperor? The eyes of the four men all turned to Lu Wanna, their faces filled with anxious anticipation. Lu Wanna sighed quietly to herself. It was clear that for these ministers and the Empress Dowager, the fate of the dynasty would always take precedence over the life of a single man. No one here truly cared whether the young emperor was alive or dead. She felt a flicker of fear in her heart, afraid that once she spoke these words, the course of history would be altered forever. She pressed her lips together, then continued, "Prince Jinkang has a young son, an heir apparent of noble bearing. His Royal Highness is around the same age as His Majesty, with a similar stature. Moreover, since they are of the same royal bloodline, they even bear a faint resemblance to each other. Most importantly, His Royal Highness has been studying under the renowned master of disguise from the martial arts world, the Thousand Faces Hand. He has mastered the art of disguise to perfection. The human skin masks he creates can easily fool even the most discerning eye. Furthermore, under Prince Jinkang's careful tutelage, His Royal Highness is well versed in the classics, excels in both literature and martial arts, and carries himself with the poise and grace befitting a member of the imperial family. Therefore, you want the young heir apparent to take the emperor's place temporarily." The Empress Dowager immediately understood her plan. The three ministers were stunned for a moment, thinking the idea somewhat absurd, but in their current desperate situation, it seemed like the only viable option. Besides, the young heir was a member of the royal family by blood. If he was indeed as capable as Lu Wanna claimed, then even if Xiao Mingyu was truly dead, the country would not descend into chaos. "Then it's settled, we'll proceed with this plan at once." The Empress Dowager spoke with unwavering resolve. The three ministers exchanged glances, then bowed respectfully to her. They couldn't help but marvel inwardly at how Lu Wanna had come to know such confidential information. This was a woman who rarely stepped out of the inner chambers of her home, yet she knew things that even they, the highest-ranking ministers in the land, were unaware of. Truly, there was not a single ordinary person in the Wen clan. Prince Mingyan strode out of the imperial palace, shaking the dust off his sleeves, his face dark with frustration and resentment. He walked past the rows of kneeling eunuchs and palace maids, heading straight for the palace gates. Outside the gates, a carriage had been waiting for him for a long time. Prince Mingyan climbed into the carriage, and it immediately set off. The carriage jolted up and down as it rolled over the stone-paved streets. A cup of tea was handed to him. Prince Mingyan shot a cold glance at the man sitting beside him who had offered the tea, his voice laced with anger and dissatisfaction. "You told me that the boy Xiao Mingyu was no longer in the palace. If that's true, Then what did I see in there today? A ghost. The Chanyu narrowed his eyes slightly, a faint smile playing on his lips. Is your highness certain that it was truly him? I'm not blind. How could I not recognize Xiao Mingyu when I saw him with my own eyes? Prince Ming'an let out a cold snort. My army is already lying in ambush outside the city. I originally planned to use your Jurchen forces as an excuse to march into the palace and seize control. But now all that effort and expense has been for nothing. I'll have to order my troops to withdraw and return to their camps. The Chanyu's lips curled into a mocking grin. There's no need for that, your highness. As long as you have the will to seize the throne, my Jurchen army can launch a surprise attack on the palace. You can then lead your own forces into the palace under the pretense of rescuing the emperor. It would be the perfect opportunity. Perfect opportunity. Have you lost your mind? You fought against Xiao Mingyu on the battlefield. Do you not know how ruthless and cunning that man is? Even after all the battles I've fought and all the hardships I've endured, I'm still no match for his cruelty and treachery. Memories suddenly flashed through the Chanyu's mind, the memory of his last confrontation with Xiao Mingyu on the battlefield, the moment he had ordered the executioner to cut off the head of the woman who had been made to look like Wen Yang. Xiao Mingyu had leaped off his horse like a bolt of lightning, his sword slashing toward him with deadly precision, nearly severing his hand. Prince Ming'an glanced at the empty sleeve of the Chanyu's robe. A cruel smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. The imperial forest guards alone have tens of thousands of soldiers, and the number of assassins Xiao Mingyu has secretly trained is in the thousands. If Xiao Mingyu is truly safe and sound, then all those men are still in the capital, lying in wait. The army I've brought with me, though brave and skilled in battle, fights with swords and spears in the open. They would be no match for those hidden assassins. This plan is doomed to fail. We have no choice but to abandon it. The Chanyu pressed his lips together tightly, his face darkening with rage. He lifted his gaze to meet Prince Ming'an's eyes, his gaze cold and ruthless. Prince Ming'an, noble consort Yuan is still in the palace, is she not? Your highness knows the true purpose of my visit to the capital. Since you no longer need my help, then the promise you made to me regarding consort Yuan is naturally null and void. Did you really need to ask? Prince Ming'an was arrogant and disdainful. After all, this was the imperial capital, his territory. He had never taken the Chanyu, the king of the Jurchen tribe, seriously at all. In fact, he had already stationed assassins outside the carriage, lying in wait. The moment the Chanyu stepped out of the carriage, a rain of hidden arrows would be unleashed upon him, reducing him to a bloody pulp, leaving no trace of his body behind. The carriage continued to trudge forward slowly. The cup of tea in the Chanyu's hand was still full, untouched. The cup in Prince Ming'an's hand, however, was already empty. When the carriage finally came to a stop, Prince Ming'an was eager to get out, but the Chanyu suddenly reached out and grabbed his arm, smiling at him coldly. Your Highness, there's one more thing we haven't finished yet. Prince Ming'an froze. A sudden, searing pain exploding in his head, making him dizzy and disoriented. As he collapsed to the floor of the carriage, his eyes fell on the empty teacup in his hand, and he suddenly understood everything. You put something in the water, that's right, the Chanyu replied, his voice cold and emotionless. It's called the heartbreaking powder. It takes half an hour to take effect. There are famous doctors in the capital who might be able to cure you if you're lucky enough to reach them in time. Thank you for bringing me into the capital, Your Highness. I owe you a debt of gratitude. I'll repay it in the next life if we both have one. With that, he took off Prince Ming'an's outer robe and put it on himself, then stepped out of the carriage. The coachman glanced at the man he thought was His Highness the Prince, then gave a subtle hand signal to the hidden guards lurking nearby. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The sound of arrows slicing through the air rang out. A flurry of long arrows pierced the carriage, their tips coated in poison. Blood soon began to seep out from the cracks in the carriage, staining the stone pavement a deep, dark red. This was the busiest, most prosperous part of the capital. A crowd of onlookers quickly gathered around the carriage, their faces filled with shock and fear. The coachman walked over to the carriage with a look of eager anticipation on his face, pulled open the carriage door, and then his face turned as white as a sheet. his expression morphing into one of sheer terror. A blood-curdling scream echoed through the streets. Prince Ming'an had been assassinated in broad daylight. Right there on the busy street, at the Wen mansion, Lu Wanna had just returned from the palace when she heard the news of Prince Ming'an's assassination. She wasted no time. Hurrying back to the mansion, a young servant boy rushed forward to bring a footstool, helping her climb down from her carriage. "Madam, you've finally come back. The second madam and the third madam have been waiting for you all night. Please go inside quickly, they're worried sick about you." Lu Wanna knew that her sisters-in-law were concerned about her, so she hurried into the mansion. In the main hall, the second madam and the third madam were sitting together. Accompanied by some of the older female members of the clan, they immediately stood up when they saw her, bombarding her with questions about whether she was safe and sound. Lu Wanna briefly told them about her visit to the palace, carefully omitting any mention of the emperor's disappearance. This was a matter of the utmost secrecy. She could not afford to let any word of it leak within the walls of the Wen mansion, seeing that Lu Wanna was unharmed. Her sisters-in-law and the other female relatives finally relaxed, and after some gentle persuasion, they all went back to their rooms to rest. Lu Wanna also planned to go back to her own quarters to wash up and rest. Her head was still throbbing with pain from everything that had happened the previous night. The Empress Dowager had kept her talking all night long, rambling on about various things, but the main point of their conversation was that she wanted Changfeng, the eldest son of the second madam, to be sent to the military camp. If all the men of the Wen clan were still alive, a 15-year-old boy like Changfeng would indeed be old enough to join the army and serve his country. But now, the older generation of the Wen clan was gone, all of them dead. Sending Changfeng to the military camp would only mean sending him to endure hardship and suffering. The Empress Dowager had promised her that Changfeng would be given preferential treatment and special care, but without any military merits to his name, any special treatment he received would only invite jealousy and resentment from others. Changfeng was the second madam's only remaining child, her most precious treasure. Lu Wanna knew that it would be impossible to persuade her to let him go. Besides, Lu Wanna herself had no desire to send him off to war. She had no grand ambitions for her family or her country. All she wanted was to protect her family, to keep everyone safe and healthy, to watch them grow up. From now on, she wanted nothing more to do with battlefields or military camps. The Wen clan had already sacrificed enough. She just hoped that the Empress Dowager would not come to her again with more demands and troubles. Xiao Mingyu was not the Empress Dowager's biological son. Whether he was missing or dead, she truly did not care. As long as there was someone sitting on the dragon throne, her position as Empress Dowager would remain secure and unthreatened. Prince Jingkang was a loyal and patriotic man. It would not be difficult to persuade him to lend his son for this ruse. Once Prince Jingkang agreed to return to the imperial court and assist in governing the country, and once the young heir apparent had firmly established himself on the throne, they could easily find an excuse to formally recognize him as the new emperor. Everything would then fall into place. Yet when it came to military strategy, the young heir was inherently lacking. Without a capable leader to command the battlefield, the future of the dynasty would be uncertain indeed. This was the Empress Dowager's true intention all along. She was exploiting the Wen clan's Achilles heel, their unyielding pride in military glory. A pride that they valued even more than their own lives. What was she to do? The surviving uncles and elders of the Wen clan would undoubtedly insist that Changfeng and the other young boys of the clan enlist in the army one after another, all to uphold the family's honor for generations to come. The pressure from the court was mounting, and Changfeng was still so young. After much deliberation, Lu Wanna resolved to wait until Changfeng was married and had children of his own. And only then would she ask for his own wishes before discussing the matter of joining the military camp. No matter what, she would resist this pressure from above. Lu Wanna rubbed her throbbing temples, then suddenly heard the sound of hurried footsteps echoing down the corridor. Her eyes sharpened with alertness, and she immediately followed the sound into the inner courtyard. To her astonishment, the man standing there was Xiao Wu. "You're supposed to be on duty at the palace today. Why have you returned so suddenly?" Xiao Wu looked utterly dejected, his head hanging low as he hesitated to speak. A sense of foreboding washed over Lu Wanna. She feared that Xiao Wu, overcome with grief over Wen Yang's death, had done something reckless and impulsive. What's wrong? Spit it out at once, otherwise. How can I possibly help you, madam? I've gotten myself into a terrible mess. I attacked someone with my axe. Attacked someone. This was truly a catastrophe. Who did you attack? A man or a woman? What provoked you to do such a thing? Tell me everything, from beginning to end, without leaving out a single detail. The words died on her lips as a faint scent of blood drifted into her nostrils. She stared in horror at the figure lying unconscious on the ground behind Xiao Wu. Blood was still oozing from a wound in his chest. It was Xiao Mingyu. Xiao Wu had actually attacked the reigning emperor of the Great Zhu. Lu Wanna's legs went weak beneath her, and she barely managed to stay upright, even though she had weathered countless storms and crises in her life. She had never witnessed anyone daring to lay a hand on the emperor himself. Without a moment's hesitation, Lu Wanna ordered Xiao Wu to fetch her medical kit from her chambers at once. In her early years in Jiangnan, she had studied under a renowned physician who was a personal friend of her father's. Her skills in medicine had been honed and perfected over the years by treating her husband's numerous battle wounds, both old and new. After examining the emperor's injuries carefully, Lu Wanna let out a long, relieved breath. She took the golden wound medicine and clean bandages from her kit, dressed the wound skillfully, and then had the unconscious emperor carried to a bed to rest. The wound is not deep, but he has lost a great deal of blood. Fortunately, his life is not in danger. I will prepare a tonic to replenish his blood and restore his strength later. He should make a full recovery in a few days. Upon hearing this, Xiao Wu heaved a deep, trembling sigh of relief. Lu Wanna reached out and flicked him lightly on the forehead, her voice laced with exasperation. What on earth were you thinking? How many times have I told you to stay calm? How did Wen Yang ever put up with your impulsive temper? Xiao Wu pressed his lips together tightly, his eyes brimming with tears of shame and grievance. Lu Wanna softened, realizing that she could not afford to berate him any further. She took a deep breath and said gently, "It's done now. Just keep this a secret, don't breathe a word of this to anyone outside the mansion. Once he has fully recovered from his injuries, I will go to the palace to beg for the emperor's forgiveness." Xiao Wu nodded silently, then turned and walked out of the room, his shoulders hunched over in dejection, watching his lonely, desolate figure disappear down the corridor. Lu Wanna felt a pang of sympathy tug at her heart. Wen Yang's death had caused so much pain to so many people. Yet she could not tell anyone the truth that Wen Yang was still alive. Wen Yang was her daughter, her beloved, only daughter. For the sake of her safety, she could not confide in anyone, not even her own family. She then turned her gaze to the man lying unconscious on the bed. A flicker of resentment crossed her face. But in the end, she dared not neglect his care in the slightest. For better or for worse, the fate of this entire nation still rested in his hands. Late at night, a faint, delicate fragrance drifted into Xiao Mingyu's nostrils, the bitter, subtle scent of clear tea. Even in his deep, feverish sleep, he could smell it distinctly. His eyes fluttered open. He pushed open the door of the room and saw that the young boy who had been guarding his door had fallen fast asleep, his head nodding off against the wall. Following the scent, Xiao Mingyu stumbled unsteadily through the mansion, past the main hall, through the back courtyard, across the firewood shed until he reached the depths of a dense forest. Behind the Wen mansion, there was actually a vast bamboo grove. The moonlight was bright and clear, casting a silvery glow over the ground. His shadow swayed unsteadily as he staggered forward. A surge of inexplicable joy and excitement coursed through his veins, so strong that he did not even feel the sharp pain of his wound reopening on his chest. Blood soaked through his robes, but he did not stop walking. Finally, a faint glimmer of light appeared in the distance. Deep within the bamboo grove, wispy tendrils of smoke curled slowly upward from a chimney, drifting high into the night sky. It was a small bamboo cottage, built right on the surface of a tranquil lake. The bamboo walls were a fresh, vibrant green, looking brand new. A woman with long, flowing black hair sat on the veranda of the cottage, her shoes removed, her bare feet dangling playfully over the surface of the lake. Her feet were slender and delicate, her big toes curling slightly inward. She exuded an air of indescribable laziness and contentment. The woman was dressed in a plain white robe, with an orange silk shawl draped over her shoulders. The soft, flowing fabric created a fresh, striking visual contrast against the green bamboo and blue water. Her delicate fingers curled around the edge of a teacup, bringing it slowly to her lips. Her lips were as red as cherries, and she sipped the tea slowly, smacking her lips gently in satisfaction. When he finally saw her face, partially obscured by her cascading hair, Xiao Mingyu's eyes flooded with tears once again. Wen Yang, she was alive, she was really here. A silent sob rose in his throat, but he choked it back forcefully, the pain of it making him clutch at his collar tightly. Overwhelming joy, unbearable sorrow. Xiao Mingyu's feet rooted themselves to the spot. He did not dare to take another step forward. I never thought you would actually find her. A cold, calm voice broke the silence. Xiao Mingyu turned to see Lu Wanna standing beside him, her figure appearing out of nowhere in the darkness. Xiao Mingyu pressed his lips together tightly, thousands of words swirling in his mind, but when he opened his mouth, only 3 words came out, hoarse and broken. I'm sorry, I'll leave now. Wait, Lu Wanna called out, stopping him in his tracks. She said quietly, since your Majesty has come all this way, why not come with me to see Wen Yang? She has been very lonely these past few months. A small bamboo raft floated on the surface of the lake. Lu Wanna stood at the stern, pushing against the water with a long bamboo pole, guiding the raft slowly toward the cottage in the middle of the lake. Inside the cottage, Wen Yang's face lit up with joy when she saw them. She waved eagerly at Lu Wanna from a distance. As soon as Lu Wanna stepped onto the veranda of the cottage, Wen Yang rushed forward and threw herself into her arms. Mother, where have you been these past few days? It's been so long since you last came to see me. Lu Wanna stroked her daughter's hair gently, chiding her with a fond, indulgent smile. Why did you take down your hair again? Didn't you like the elegant updo I styled for you earlier? Wen Yang nuzzled her face against Lu Wanna's chest, her voice soft and coquettish. It looked pretty, but it was so uncomfortable. I didn't like it, so I took it apart. Really, what will people say? A young lady like you, with her hair hanging loose like this, it's simply not proper. There's no one else here except us, so who cares? She laughed brightly, her eyes then falling on the figure of Xiao Mingyu standing behind Lu Wanna. Mother, who is this man? Why is he wearing a mask? The mask on Xiao Mingyu's face was a gift from Lu Wanna. She had told him solemnly, when Yang suffered severe psychological trauma after the war, she cannot bear to see anyone she used to know, and this included even her own family members. Lu Wanna was Wen Yang's mother, the woman she loved and trusted the most in the world. Only in her mother's presence could Wen Yang truly relax and behave like her old self. Lu Wanna smiled gently at her daughter and explained, he's an old friend of mine. He heard that you've been recovering well from your injuries, so he wanted to come and visit you. Wen Yang hopped barefoot onto the bamboo floor, spinning around in a circle to show off her improved health. Thank you for coming to see me. Where's my gift? She held out her hand expectantly toward Lu Wanna. Xiao Mingyu froze, a look of awkward embarrassment crossing his face beneath the mask. Lu Wanna reached out and tapped her daughter's palm lightly, pretending to be stern. What a rude little girl. Where are your manners? Wen Yang frowned, pouting her lips in disappointment. No gift. Grandpa always brings me lots of nice things when he comes to visit. Honestly, your grandfather has spoiled you rotten. You've completely lost all sense of propriety. Lu Wanna was still scolding her daughter affectionately when Xiao Mingyu reached into his bosom and pulled out an object. It was the paper fan. Xiao Wu had told him that this fan was Wen Yang's most cherished possession in the world. If he gave it to her, she would surely be happy. The fan was placed gently into Wen Yang's outstretched hands. The fan handle was exquisitely carved, adorned with delicate, flowing tassels. The pale blue color of the fan made Wen Yang's eyes light up with delight. This was a color she had always loved. Now that she was holding it in her hands, she was filled with pure, unadulterated joy. She unfolded the fan eagerly. Painted on the fan was a magnificent scene of galloping horses. The horses were depicted with such vivid detail that they seemed to be charging forward with unstoppable momentum, kicking up clouds of dust in their wake. The painting captured the grandeur of the mountains and rivers under a clear blue sky. A poem was inscribed beside the painting, dragon-scaled backs adorned with coin-shaped patterns, silver hooves tread upon mist and clouds. No one weaves a brocade saddle blanket for them. Who will forge a golden whip to guide their way? It was a poem about the battlefield, a poem about war horses. The moment when Yang opened the fan, her cheerful, carefree expression vanished as if she had been possessed by an evil spirit. She let out a blood-curdling scream. Lu Wanna realized something was terribly wrong and rushed forward to hold her tightly in her arms. Yang, it's all right, Mother is here, Mother is with you. But when Yang continued to scream hysterically, her body trembling violently, her eyes were wide with terror, completely unfocused, she cried out in a broken voice, "Mother, there's so much blood, they're all dead, everyone is dead, I killed so many people. But there were too many enemies, I couldn't defeat them all. Mother, save me, my face." She clawed frantically at her own cheeks with her fingernails. The realistic human skin mask covering her face was torn off in an instant, a face covered in deep, jagged scars was revealed to Xiao Mingyu's horrified eyes. The scars stretched from her forehead all the way down to her chin, looking like deep, gaping ravines enough to make anyone's heart skip a beat. But the scars on her face were not the worst of it, there were also scars covering her entire body. As she thrashed and struggled in Lu Wanna's arms, Xiao Mingyu caught a glimpse of her ankles. Not a single inch of skin was unmarred by scars and wounds. It took Lu Wanna a great deal of effort to finally calm her daughter down. She lit an incense stick infused with a sedative, and soon when Yang fell into a deep, exhausted sleep, while her daughter slept, Lu Wanna did not forget to tend to her wounds carefully. One wound was on her calf, another was on her shoulder blade, and the third was the terrible scar that marred her face. All three wounds had been inflicted on the battlefield. No one knew for certain who had caused them. As for the countless smaller wounds covering her body, they had all scabbed over and healed, leaving behind a network of faint, silvery scars. Lu Wanna's heart ached with unspeakable sorrow as she looked at her once beautiful daughter, now reduced to this state. She was terrified that when Yang would be horrified by her own reflection if she ever looked into a mirror, so she had searched far and wide for a master craftsman who could make realistic human skin masks. In the end, she had learned from Prince Jinkang that his son, the young heir apparent, was a master of disguise. She had begged the young heir to help her. He had agreed to create the mask for her, but he had set one condition. He wanted Lu Wanna to help him ascend to the throne of the Great Jew. Prince Jinkang knew nothing about this secret agreement. At first, Lu Wanna had refused flatly, but the young heir had said to her calmly, "All I ask of you is to deliver a single message to the palace. It has nothing to do with treason or rebellion, on the contrary, it is a message that will save the country from disaster." At the time, Lu Wanna could never have imagined that the young heir had already foreseen everything that would happen today. The memory sent a shiver down her spine, and she quickly snapped back to reality. She turned to look at Xiao Mingyu. His shoulders were shaking violently, his body racked with silent sobs of fear, of guilt, of unbearable regret. "Your Majesty, please return to the palace now." At the sound of Lu Wanna's voice, Xiao Mingyu finally lifted his head, his eyes meeting hers through the mask. Xiao Mingyu paid no heed to Lu Wanna's words. Instead, he asked hoarsely, "When did she come back?" The story of Wen Yang's return was a strange and twisted one. On the day of the old Madame Wen's funeral, commoners and nobles alike had flocked to the Wen mansion to offer their condolences, including Prince Jinkang and his son, the young heir apparent. After Prince Jinkang had returned the memorial tablet dedicated to Wen Yang, the young heir had personally delivered Wen Yang to the mansion, her body already treated for her wounds. He had solemnly instructed Lu Wanna that Wen Yang's condition was critical and that she needed complete peace and quiet to recover. That very night, Lu Wanna had ordered the construction of this bamboo grove and cottage. She had brought Wen Yang here, hidden away from the rest of the world. It had been many days since then. The young heir visited occasionally to check on Wen Yang's progress. Other than him, only Lu Wanna's father, Lu Shong, came to see her, bringing her all sorts of interesting trinkets to lift her spirits. But Lu Wanna did not share any of this with Xiao Mingyu. She merely said, "It was a twist of fate. When Wen Yang returned to me, her body was covered in blood from head to toe. I could not bear to ask her what horrors she had endured. Can you, Your Majesty, can you truly bring yourself to ask her?" That one phrase, "can you truly bear to ask her," sent a violent tremor through Xiao Mingyu's heart. If merely seeing a painting of war horses could reduce her to such a state of terror, then any person who truly cared for Wen Yang, how could they ever bring themselves to dredge up those painful memories? Your Majesty has seen with your own eyes what has become of her, so please, no more entanglements. The Wen clan owes the imperial family nothing. Wen Yang owes you nothing. Let me keep my only surviving child safe. Let us live out the rest of our days in peace. As Lu Wanna spoke, her voice cracked repeatedly, thick with unshed tears. Especially when she said the word only, there was no mistaking the faint, bitter accusation laced within it. The men of the Wen clan had dedicated their entire lives to the military. From her grandfather's generation onward, not a single one of them had died a peaceful death in their beds. Every last one of them had gone off to the battlefield in their prime and never returned. I, Lu Wanna, am nothing but a weak woman. I have no lofty ideals of loyalty to the throne or glory in battle. I know that the imperial family is currently short of capable military commanders. But my family's children are still far too young to bear such a burden. After you return to the palace, Your Majesty, please tell the Empress Dowager not to force any more members of the Wen clan to join the military. On behalf of the dozens of lives lost in my family, I beg you." Before Lu Wanna could kneel to him, Xiao Mingyu moved with lightning speed, reaching out to support her, preventing her from touching the ground. Lu Wanna was using Wen Yang's pitiful state to secure imperial protection for Changfeng. "Do not worry, Madam Wen. The matter of Wen Changfeng, I will personally see to it that he is not troubled." Upon hearing this, Lu Wanna let out a long, relieved breath. But the matter of the young heir apparent lingered in her mind, refusing to fade away. In the end, she could not keep silent. She did not want Xiao Mingyu to be so easily replaced by the young heir. "Your Majesty, there is one more thing I must tell you." After Xiao Mingyu left the bamboo cottage, Lu Wanna's father, Lu Shong, arrived shortly afterward. She told him everything that had happened: the fight between Xiao Mingyu and Xiao Wu, the emperor's discovery of Wen Yang's hiding place. Lu Shong's brows furrowed deeply as he listened, his face grave. "Father, I am afraid that this time, Yang will not be able to escape her fate. You did not see the way Xiao Mingyu looked at her, the joy, the longing, and the overwhelming possessiveness in his eyes. I am truly terrified." When Yang was her daughter, Lu Wanna had already regretted allowing Wen Yang to enter the palace and marry Xiao Mingyu for the rest of her life. Now, she never wanted Wen Yang to have anything to do with Xiao Mingyu ever again. Lu Shong stroked his neatly trimmed beard, his eyes sharp with the shrewdness of a seasoned businessman. Then he spoke with unwavering resolve. "Yang cannot stay in the capital any longer. She must come with me back to Jiangnan. The power struggles of the capital are beyond our control. In Jiangnan, perhaps her condition will improve." This was exactly what Lu Wanna had been thinking. The merchants of Jiangnan were a powerful, united force, and her father was a man of great influence there. Moreover, Jiangnan was a land of many skilled healers and martial arts masters. Perhaps there, the terrible scars on Wen Yang's body and soul could finally be healed. The decision was made. Lu Wanna wasted no time. She packed Wen Yang's belongings quietly, and they left that very afternoon. Not a single member of the Wen clan was informed of their departure. In the imperial palace, noble consort Yuan had tried repeatedly to request an audience with the emperor, but each time, she had been turned away. The emperor had even sent a message via the chief eunuch, ordering her to focus on managing the affairs of the harem instead of wasting his time. He claimed that he was far too busy with matters of state to see her. After receiving this imperial edict, Yuan spent her days weeping bitterly, her heart broken. Unable to see the emperor, she had no choice but to turn to the Empress Dowager for help. But to her shock, the Empress Dowager treated her with the same cold indifference. The Empress Dowager's once affectionate concern for her had vanished completely. Yuan felt as if she had lost all her allies and supporters within the palace walls. The cold, dismissive attitudes of both the Empress Dowager and the Emperor were more than enough to break her heart. To make matters worse, the supplies and luxuries allocated to her palace had been drastically reduced. The promise the Empress Dowager had made to her to make her the Empress of the Great Jew had been quietly forgotten, never to be mentioned again. A Yuan was completely alone and helpless. It was at this moment of despair that the Chanyu suddenly appeared before her. "You're insane. This is the Imperial Palace, not the Jurchen grasslands. How did you get in here?" The Chanyu was dressed in the uniform of a palace eunuch, a cunning smirk playing on his lips. The moment he saw a Yuan, he rushed forward and pulled her roughly into his arms. "A Yuan, I have missed you so much." A Yuan struggled violently, trying to push him away. If anyone were to see her in the embrace of a man who was not the emperor, her position as noble consort would be ruined forever. "A Yuan, come back to the Jurchen tribe with me." The Chanyu pinned her down, pressing his body against hers, lifting her legs off the ground. The intense, burning desire in his eyes made a Yuan's entire body tremble with fear. "No, I will never go with you. I am Han Chinese, not one of you Jurchen barbarians. You have no right to treat me like this. Let go of me at once." But the Chanyu only smiled, tightening his grip on her. "I have worked so hard to find you. Do you really think I will let you go so easily? Besides, a Yuan, have you forgotten something?" A Yuan froze, her face turned as pale as a sheet of paper. Once, she had made a promise to the Chanyu, a promise that had cost Wen Yang her life. The Chanyu stared at her, his eyes cold and calculating. As he spoke each word slowly and clearly, "You told me that if I helped you get rid of Wen Yang, if I destroyed her reputation and made her a traitor in the eyes of the world, you would give me what I wanted." A Yuan knew exactly what the Chanyu wanted. This man, the king of the Jurchen tribe, had regarded her as the most precious treasure in the world ever since he was 18 years old. Later, he had defeated his own brothers in a brutal struggle for power, ascending to the throne of the Jurchen tribe all for the sake of being able to marry her. If Xiao Mingyu had never appeared in her life, a Yuan would have long ago become the Chanyu's wife, the mistress of the vast grasslands. But Xiao Mingyu's arrival had changed everything. It had awakened a new desire in her heart. She was unwilling to spend her life riding horses across the endless grasslands, surrounded by nothing but livestock. She was unwilling to eat mutton and drink goat's milk every day, smelling like the steppes wherever she went. She craved the refinement and elegance of the great Jew court, the poetry, the art, the culture, the golden jewelry. The silk robes of the great Jew were infinitely more beautiful than the fur and leather garments of the grasslands. It was because of Xiao Mingyu that she had realized her true calling. The Han Chinese blood flowing through her veins made her completely unsuited for life on the grasslands. She had abandoned everything to enter the imperial palace, to become a part of the royal family. Becoming a noble consort had been the happiest moment of her life. Even though Xiao Mingyu had never looked at her with desire or affection, she was still his noble consort. In the absence of an empress, she was the most powerful woman in the harem. The Chanyu's hands slid greedily beneath a Yuan's silk robes, his touch making her gasp. Her soft, involuntary whimper filled him with pleasure. The Chanyu bit down on her neck, finally claiming the body he had longed for so many years. He kissed her fiercely, his lips trailing down her neck, her chest, lower and lower. A wave of heat surged through a Yuan's body. It was a strange, shameful fire, humiliating, yet strangely thrilling. As a Yuan's mind went blank with confusion, the Chanyu took advantage of her momentary weakness. Tearing off her skirt and undergarments in one rough motion, he thrust himself inside her, moving relentlessly. When it was over, the Chanyu stared at the bloodstain on a Yuan's clothes, a cruel, mocking smile spreading across his face. "A Yuan, 3 years. I never imagined that after 3 long years, Xiao Mingyu had never touched you." A Yuan's face burned with shame. The sharp pain between her legs told her that her innocence was gone. Amidst her anger and humiliation, a faint, girlish shyness crept into her expression despite herself. Tears streamed down her face as she regretted the promise she had made. But at the same time, a new thought formed in her mind. This was an opportunity to manipulate the Chanyu, to make him her loyal servant for the rest of his life. Just as she was about to pour out her sorrows, to evoke his sympathy, she looked up and saw nothing but disdain and disgust in his eyes. She froze, a chill running down her spine. "Chanyu, what is that look in your eyes?" The Chanyu laughed coldly, reaching out to pinch her chin roughly. "I feel sorry for you." Her face turned even paler, his voice, cold and ruthless, echoed in her ears. "A Yuan, did you really think that I loved you, that I risked my life to come here just to be with you?" A Yuan's entire body began to tremble violently. "You are nothing but a woman that Xiao Mingyu didn't even want. I am the great king of the Jurchen tribe. Do you think I could not have any woman I desired? A Yuan, I only pretended to dote on you so that my brothers would think I was a lovesick fool. That I was too distracted by you to pose a threat to their power. That way, I could eliminate them one by one without them suspecting a thing. Otherwise, with your ordinary looks and your petty, selfish ambitions, what makes you think you were ever worthy of my attention?" Each word was a knife, cutting deeply into her heart. A Yuan bit her lips so hard that it began to bleed. "No, that's impossible. All those moments we shared, how could they have all been a lie?" The Chanyu watched her crumble. Her face twisted with shock, anger, and heartbreak, and felt a surge of cruel satisfaction. "Ha ha 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 ha, so you're still clinging to the fantasy that I loved you. A Yuan, you are truly pathetic. When I was pretending to be in love with you, you spoke ill of me behind my back to everyone. You called me a barbarian, a brute, a man with no refinement. You hated my love for you. Now that I've told you the truth, that I was using you all along, you're actually heartbroken. Ha 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 ha. You are the epitome of selfishness. You truly believe that every man in the world should bow down to you, should worship the ground you walk on." A Yuan could not believe what she was hearing. She tried to argue, clinging to the last shred of hope in her heart. "You were so kind to me. How could all of that have been an act?" The Chanyu let out another loud, mocking laugh. "Perhaps there was a tiny spark of genuine affection for you once, before you stole Wen Yang's credit for saving my life. But after that, I felt nothing but disgust for you. A Yuan, look in the mirror, look at your face. How could you ever compare to her? Xiao Mingyu was right to reject you. Wen Yang was such a brave, noble woman. How dare you even think you were worthy to stand in her shadow? If it weren't for me pulling the strings behind the scenes, do you really think you could have ever entered this palace as a noble consort? Do you think you could have ever enjoyed this life of luxury and privilege? What? What did you say? It was you. Do you want to hear the rest? Too bad, I'm tired of talking. I thought after all these years under Xiao Mingyu's roof, you would have gained a shred of self-awareness. But the way you lay there like a dead fish just now, it's clear you're completely useless to me now." With that, the Chanyu turned on his heel and strode out of the palace chambers without a backward glance. A Yuan was left alone, clutching her torn and tattered robes. Her mind reeling with memories of the Chanyu's once tender and affectionate gestures toward her. She had craved tofu pudding, a delicacy unavailable on the grasslands, and the Chanyu had traveled thousands of miles just to find a master chef who could make it for her. She had loved poetry and calligraphy, but lacked proper ink, brushes, and paper, and the Chanyu had journeyed to the capital, spending a fortune to acquire a set of the finest treasures for her, on the grasslands. She should have dressed in furs and leather like all the other Jurchen women, but because the Chanyu doted on her so deeply, he had insisted she wear elegant hand-style silk robes instead. He had been so kind to her. How could all of it have been a lie? Suddenly, a horrifying thought struck her. After she had met Xiao Mingyu, she had been determined to enter the imperial harem at any cost, so she had framed the Chanyu for plotting an assassination, deliberately provoking a war between the Jurchen tribe and the Great Zhou dynasty. Then she had offered herself to Xiao Mingyu as a peace offering to seal a marriage alliance between the two nations. At the time, the Great Zhou court had favored peace above all else, so she had known Xiao Mingyu would have no choice but to accept her as his consort. That was how she had easily entered the palace and become a noble consort. But what if her so-called scheme had actually been orchestrated by the Chanyu all along? The terrifying implications of this realization made a Yuan's entire body tremble violently with fear. Just then, a voice echoed from outside the door. "His Majesty the Emperor has arrived." A Yuan's eyes widened in shock. Before she could even scramble to put on her clothes, The palace doors were thrown open with a loud bang. Xiao Mingyu stood in the doorway, dressed in his imperial dragon robe, flanked by a retinue of eunuchs and palace maids. The eunuchs and maids stared in stunned silence at the disheveled state of the chamber and at a Yuan's exposed and trembling form. Then Xiao Mingyu spoke, his voice cold and unforgiving. Noble consort A Yuan has committed unspeakable acts of immorality and brought great shame to the imperial harem. From this day forth, she shall be confined to Chang'an Temple. She is forbidden to ever return to the palace for the rest of her life. A thunderclap seemed to explode in a Yuan's mind. Her wealth and luxury gone, her fine silks and delicious feasts gone, Chang'an Temple, a nunnery. Her life was over, completely and utterly over. Xiao Qingying strode out of a Yuan's palace chambers and headed straight for the imperial study. Inside the study, the real Xiao Mingyu was waiting for him. Your imperial brother, it has been far too long. Xiao Qingying smiled faintly as he spoke, his face hidden behind a lifelike human skin mask that made him look identical to Xiao Mingyu. Since we are meeting in private, there is no need for that mask. As soon as Xiao Mingyu finished speaking, Xiao Qingying reached up and peeled the mask off his face. A face that bore a striking 7-point resemblance to Xiao Mingyu's was revealed. How does it feel to wear the imperial crown? Xiao Mingyu asked. His hands already reaching for the inkstone on the desk, Xiao Qingying replied, his eyes glinting with a hint of obsession. It is a feeling of being revered by 10,000 people. A single cough, a mere glance, and everyone around you scurries to guess your every thought. It is addictive. As he spoke, his eyes studied Xiao Mingyu carefully, searching for any sign of anger or jealousy, but Xiao Mingyu's expression remained completely unchanged at his words. His hands continued to grind the inkstick against the stone, his movements steady and unhurried. Xiao Qingying took a step closer, reaching out to take the inkstone from Xiao Mingyu's hands and grinding the ink for him. Xiao Mingyu showed no sign of emotion. He simply picked up a sheet of rice paper and a brush, preparing to write. Your imperial brother, you are in quite the mood, to still have the leisure to write at a time like this. It was you who instructed me to leave that message for Lu Wanna, and now, as you wished, I am sitting on the throne of the great Jew, the most powerful man in the world. Now that you have returned, are you not afraid that I have grown greedy for power, that I will refuse to hand the throne back to you? Only then did Xiao Mingyu lift his eyes, his gaze meeting Xiao Qingying's. He spoke slowly, his voice calm and unwavering. No, I am not afraid. Xiao Qingying raised an eyebrow in surprise, just as Xiao Mingyu began to write on the rice paper. Your imperial brother, your calligraphy has always been exquisite. I have envied it since we were children. Do you remember when we studied together in this very study? The imperial tutor always praised your handwriting for its grace and precision. As for me, I was constantly scolded for being incompetent and lazy. I resented it back then, but now, no matter how hard I try, my own handwriting can never compare to yours. After all these years, my style has become too ingrained to change, which is why it would be so difficult for anyone to forge your signature. Yes, Xiao Mingyu replied, not looking up from his writing, which is why I have already written it for you. From the moment they had met, Xiao Mingyu had referred to himself not as we, the emperor, but simply as I. Xiao Qingying frowned slightly in confusion. Then Xiao Mingyu picked up the sheet of paper he had just finished writing on and handed it to him. Will you read this proclamation yourself, or shall I walk to the main hall and announce it to the entire court in person? Xiao Qingying stared at the paper, still unsure of what it contained. Then his eyes fell on the two large characters written in Xiao Mingyu's elegant calligraphy, Abdication Edict. Xiao Qingying's eyes widened in shock. Your imperial brother, what is the meaning of this? Xiao Mingyu let out a cold, humorless laugh. Does this not fulfill your deepest desire? Is this not what you have always wanted? It was true, Xiao Qingying had always craved the imperial throne. The moment he had learned that Xiao Mingyu had returned to the palace, he had already stationed hundreds of his personal assassins nearby. Even within the walls of this imperial study, Xiao Qingying had secretly deployed over 1,000 hidden guards. His plan had been to provoke Xiao Mingyu into a fit of rage with his words, giving him a legitimate excuse to kill Xiao Mingyu and seize the throne once and for all. His father, Prince Jingkang, had been loyal to the imperial family for decades, but ever since Xiao Qingying was a child, he had known that to sit on the dragon throne, he would have to cross Xiao Mingyu first. He had spent years plotting and preparing for this moment, ready to launch his coup and claim the throne as his own. But he had never imagined that Xiao Mingyu would simply hand it over to him without a fight. There was no such thing as a free lunch in this world. Xiao Qingying's mind raced with 1,000 different possibilities, each one more suspicious than the last. Everyone knew that the emperor of the Great Jew was no fool. He had ascended the throne at the age of 10. By the age of 12, he had already seized full control of the government from his regents. At 15, he had recaptured all the territories that his father, the late emperor, had lost. He had reformed the outdated policies of the previous reign, governing the country with wisdom and flexibility, adapting to the times and the needs of his people. Under his rule, the Great Jew had flourished like never before. Even when the beloved Wen clan had been wrongfully disgraced, not a single person in the entire country had dared to utter a word of criticism against him. They were too afraid to blame him, too unwilling to believe that their wise and benevolent emperor could be capable of such cruelty. He was a legendary ruler, deeply beloved and revered by his people, a reputation that was etched into the very hearts of the Great Jew's citizens. If it were not for the human skin mask that allowed him to impersonate Xiao Mingyu perfectly, Xiao Qingying would never have dared to harbor such treasonous thoughts. "Your imperial brother, why are you doing this?" Xiao Mingyu replied, his voice devoid of any emotion. "I am tired of being emperor. From now on, you shall govern this country as its rightful ruler." Xiao Qingying smiled, but his eyes glinted with shrewd calculation. "Your imperial brother, your sudden generosity makes me rather uneasy. Without knowing your true motives, I dare not accept this golden throne, even for a moment." Xiao Mingyu let out a soft snort, his eyes flicking toward the door, where faint shadows could be seen moving in the darkness. "I know exactly what you are thinking. If you wish to order your hidden guards to enter this room, by all means, send them in." Xiao Qingying adjusted the sleeves of his dragon robe, his voice laced with a hint of longing. "Your imperial brother, the imperial dragon robe feels so comfortable to wear. I have only worn it once, but I already cannot bear to take it off. Why does this garment hold such irresistible allure? To sit on the dragon throne, high above all others, to be the supreme ruler of the world, to see everyone kneel and prostrate themselves before you, the taste of power is simply intoxicating." Xiao Mingyu's lips curved into a faint smile. He knew his younger brother well. Xiao Qingying was a man of decisive action, never one to hesitate or drag his feet. When they had studied together in the Imperial Academy as children, their tutor had once praised Xiao Qingying for having the bearing of an emperor, but he had also warned that his ambition was written plainly on his face, that he lacked the compassion and magnanimity that a true ruler needed. The imperial tutor had believed that a good emperor should prioritize the happiness of his people above all else, that expanding the empire through warfare would only bring chaos and suffering to the realm, but Xiao Qingying was a man who loved war. Every time there was a conflict with the Jurchen tribe, Xiao Qingying had been the first to advocate for military action, and every time, his proposals had been rejected by the other ministers, for the late emperor had left behind a legacy of governing the country through peace and harmony. But now, the ruler of the Jurchen tribe was the Chanyu, a man of boundless ambition and ruthless political cunning. The policy of peace that Xiao Mingyu had championed for so long would never be able to withstand the Chanyu's relentless expansionist ambitions. In fact, Xiao Mingyu's reluctance to go to war, his so-called weakness, might very well lead to the downfall of the Great Zhou dynasty. Chapter 32. If Xiao Qingying could ascend to the throne, he would be able to persuade the peace-loving ministers to take up arms against the Jurchen threat. This might very well bring a new era of prosperity and strength to the Great Zhou. It was for this reason that Xiao Mingyu had made the decision to abdicate the throne. It was a choice he had made after careful consideration and countless sleepless nights. He also knew that the moment he returned to the palace, aside from settling the matter of Wen Changfeng with the Empress Dowager, Xiao Qingying would have already laid a trap waiting for him. Your imperial brother, when did you find out that I had stationed hidden guards throughout the palace? Xiao Qingying had already realized that the shadowy figures lurking outside the door were no longer his own men. He had always known that Xiao Mingyu had his own secret network of assassins hidden within the palace walls. Their exact number was unknown, but Xiao Qingying had always been certain that Xiao Mingyu had been keeping a close eye on him, guarding against his every move. That was why Xiao Qingying had ordered his own hidden guards to send out a secret signal before they died, to let him know that his position was compromised. He had already caught a whiff of the distinctive scent emitted by the bodies of his fallen guards. Xiao Mingyu picked up the abdication edict and handed it to Xiao Qingying, his voice calm and steady. From the very beginning, the moment I asked you to impersonate me, I already planned for this day. Xiao Qingying froze in shock. Then pressed his lips together tightly. He had always known his elder brother was clever, but he had never imagined he was this far-sighted. It was no wonder the imperial tutor had favored Xiao Mingyu more than him when they were young. Xiao Qingying knew that he was defeated. There was no way out for him now. He took a deep breath, stepped back, and bowed deeply to Xiao Mingyu. Your imperial brother, I am at your mercy. Do with me as you will. If you wish to execute me and exterminate my entire clan for treason, I will not utter a single word of complaint. No ruler would ever tolerate a member of the imperial family who plotted to seize the throne. Xiao Qingying understood perfectly well that Xiao Mingyu had every right to punish him and his entire family, the house of Prince Jinkang, for their betrayal. If their positions were reversed, if Xiao Qingying were the emperor and Xiao Mingyu the traitor, he would not rest until every last one of his enemies was put to death. Xiao Mingyu looked at his younger brother, then reached into his sleeve and pulled out another object, handing it to him. Xiao Qingying stared at the gleaming jade pendant engraved with the imperial seal of the Great Jew. A look of utter disbelief crossed his face. Take this, Xiao Mingyu said simply. Xiao Qingying's eyes widened in shock. Your imperial brother. He could not bring himself to believe that Xiao Mingyu was truly giving him the imperial jade pendant, the symbol of the emperor's authority. He could only assume that this was another one of Xiao Mingyu's tricks. A way to trap him and condemn him to an even more terrible fate. Put those ridiculous suspicions out of your head. I am not as devious as you think. My words mean exactly what they say. The abdication edict is yours. The imperial dragon talisman is yours, this entire kingdom you have coveted for so long. I give it to you. Xiao Qingying's eyes widened in disbelief, his gaze darting frantically to and fro as he stared at Xiao Mingyu. Your imperial brother, you truly mean this. When have I ever lied to you? It was true. Xiao Mingyu and Xiao Qingying were as different as night and day. One was upright and honorable, always acting with integrity and fairness. The other was cunning and scheming, relying on trickery and deception to get what he wanted. Both men were capable of achieving their goals, but Xiao Qingying's methods were always far more underhanded. Xiao Qingying, I have watched you closely for many years. You possess all the qualities required to be a great emperor. If you wish to expand our borders and conquer new lands, then go forth and do as you see fit. But I have only one demand of you. Do not sacrifice innocent lives to achieve your ambitions. Among the loyal ministers of the court, those who can serve you well should be kept. Those who cannot, you must still spare their lives. Do you understand? At long last, Xiao Qingying believed that his elder brother's decision was genuine. A wave of terror washed over him, but it was quickly followed by overwhelming, intoxicating excitement. The imperial throne, the most coveted position in the entire world, was his for the taking. Xiao Qingying fell to his knees instantly, prostrating himself before Xiao Mingyu, his forehead hitting the ground with a series of loud, reverberating thuds. I shall engrave your words in my heart forever, your imperial brother. I shall never forget them. Chapter 33. The news of the emperor's abdication sent shockwaves through the entire imperial court and the kingdom beyond. When Prince Jinkang first heard the news, he was in Jiangnan, eating hot pot with Lu Shong. The moment the words left Lu Shong's mouth, Prince Jinkang nearly burned his tongue on the piping hot broth. Old friend, are you joking with me? My son is the emperor now. Does that make me the retired emperor? Lu Shong let out a non-committal hum. Then picked up a plump slice of lamb from the pot, dipped it into a sauce of sesame oil and minced garlic, and placed it in the bowl of Wen Yang, who was sitting beside them, eating with great gusto. Wen Yang took a big bite, her eyes lighting up with delight at the delicious flavor. She squinted her eyes into happy little crescents, more, seeing her enthusiasm. Lu Shong promptly snatched the plate of cooked lamb that he had just prepared for Prince Jingkang and dumped the entire contents into Wen Yang's bowl. The sesame sauce is delicious. Yang, eat as much as you want. Lamb is very good for your health. Wen Yang ate happily, completely oblivious to the world around her. Noticing that the lamb was running low, Lu Shong quickly ordered a servant to bring several more plates of fresh meat. The servant was wearing a mask over his face, but his movements were quick and efficient. Within moments, he returned with a large basin filled with thinly sliced lamb. Prince Jingkang let out a soft sigh, shaking his head in disbelief at the absurdity of the situation. He knew his son well. Xiao Qingying had always been a wild, ambitious boy. Although he had never explicitly said that he wanted to be emperor, his every word and action had been filled with a hunger for power and a desire to rule the kingdom. Prince Jingkang suddenly decided that the imperial capital was no longer a safe place for him to live. He turned to Lu Shong and said, "I really like this Jiangnan water town. Why don't you recommend a nice place for me to buy a house? Or better yet, I'll buy a small mansion right next to yours. Then we can get together for hot pot every now and then. What do you think?" Lu Shong nodded, looking pleased. "That sounds perfect. Eating alone is boring. Eating with 2 people is still a bit lonely, but eating with 3, that's just right. Leave it to me, I'll find you the perfect place." The 2 men quickly reached an agreement. Prince Jingkang then proceeded to rattle off a long list of requirements for his new house. Lu Shong listened carefully, then frowned in confusion. "Wait a minute, are you planning to bring your entire family from the capital to live here?" Prince Jingkang nodded enthusiastically. "Of course. Beautiful scenery is meant to be enjoyed with family. What's wrong? Are there no such houses available?" Lu Shong shook his head. "That's not the problem. I just think that your sudden decision to move to Jiangnan looks a bit suspicious. It might even get us into trouble." Prince Jingkang cleared his throat awkwardly, puffing out his chest with a hint of pride. "Lu Shong, think carefully. I am the retired emperor now. Then you'd better look elsewhere. My Lu family is not lucky enough to be friends with members of the imperial family." Prince Jingkang's face fell. He quickly began to wheedle and cajole. "Don't be like that. Come on, old brother. We're hot pot buddies, aren't we? This is not cool." When Yang watched the 2 old men bickering back and forth, finding their argument utterly boring, she simply focused on eating as much delicious food as possible. Meanwhile, the masked servant stood quietly beside her, helping her cook the meat, dipping it into the sauce, and attending to her every need with meticulous care. By the time Wen Yang had finished the entire basin of lamb, Lu Shong and Prince Jingkang were still arguing fiercely about where to buy the house. When Yang grew tired of the noise, she stood up and walked out of the room without a word. Seeing her leave, Lu Shong quickly turned to the masked servant and said, "Keep an eye on her when she's out playing. Be careful." "Yes, sir," the servant replied. Preparing to follow her, Lu Shong called him back, then tossed him a pouch filled with silver coins. "If the young lady wants to buy anything, pay for it with this." The servant caught the heavy pouch of silver, then hurried out of the door, afraid of losing sight of Wen Yang. Prince Jingkang watched the servant's retreating figure, a nagging sense of familiarity tugging at his memory. But try as he might, he could not remember where he had seen the man before. "Who is that? When did you hire him as a servant? Why, are you interested in poaching my staff now?" Lu Shong asked, raising an eyebrow. "Come on, don't be so suspicious. I'm not trying to steal your servant. I just think he looks familiar, that's all. I was just asking." Chapter 34. Lu Shong took a bite of pickled cabbage from the hot pot, then said casually, "We ran into a band of robbers on our way back from the capital. This young man fought them off to protect us and got injured in the process. I took pity on him, so I brought him back with us." "I see. How many robbers were there? How did he get hurt fighting them?" "What do you mean by that?" Lu Shong asked, narrowing his eyes. Prince Jingkang quickly explained, "Look at him, he has a soldier's upright posture. He's clearly a skilled martial artist. His movements are faster than most people's. And the way he waited on Wen Yang just now, his attention to detail, his gentle, careful movements, it reminds me of the way servants in the palace wait on the imperial family. Lu Shong let out a derisive snort. I think you'd better forget about buying a house in Jiangnan. A retired emperor like you belongs in the imperial capital. You've only been away for a few days. And you've already mentioned the palace how many times? You're even connecting my poor servant to the imperial palace now. I'm serious. I was just making an observation. Don't twist my words. And have you checked his background? Given Wen Yang's current condition, is it really safe to let her go out alone with just a servant? Shouldn't you go with them? There's no need. One servant is more than enough. As you said, he's very skilled in martial arts. No ordinary person would be a match for him. That was not what Prince Jinkang had meant at all. I care about Wen Yang as much as you do. She's like a granddaughter to me. I don't feel comfortable letting her go out with a servant of unknown origin. I'm going to follow them to make sure they're safe. Prince Jinkang stood up, preparing to leave, but Lu Shong quickly grabbed him by the arm, pulling him back into his seat. Really, leave the young people alone. Why are you trying to crash their little outing? I'm still young too. Have some shame, will you? Prince Jinkang grumbled and complained, but he was unable to break free from Lu Shong's grip. Just then, Lu Shong ordered the kitchen to bring out lamb kidneys and pork belly, which were Prince Jinkang's favorite dishes. The delicious aroma of the hot pot was too tempting for him to resist. If I was only suspicious before, now I'm absolutely certain. Prince Jinkang's words made Lu Shong freeze in surprise. Certain of what? You're still trying to hide it from me. With that martial arts skill, that posture, he's definitely a member of the Xiao imperial clan. Who do you think you're fooling? Fine, if you don't want to admit it, I won't press you. After all, the world has changed now. Never mind, I'd better focus on eating these kidneys before they get cold. Lu Shong struggled to hold back a laugh. He then signaled to a servant to bring 2 jars of fine wine. When Yang's health isn't as good as it used to be, she can't drink a single drop of alcohol. I didn't dare take out the wine while she was here. But now that she's gone, we brothers can finally enjoy a good drink. Retired Emperor, I'll pour you a glass. Ahaha, hearing you call me that makes me feel so embarrassed. So embarrassed. Chapter 35. The misty rain of Jiangnan hung in the air like a soft, delicate veil. Stone bridges arched gracefully over the winding rivers. Willow branches dipped their long, slender fingers into the water. Every now and then, a gentle breeze would stir the surface, sending ripples spreading outward in all directions. Occasionally, a carp would leap out of the water, adding a touch of lively energy to the tranquil scene. On both banks of the river, countless shops lined the narrow streets. Unlike the broad, carriage-friendly avenues of the imperial capital, the lanes here were narrow and winding, filled with bustling street vendors selling all sorts of delicious snacks and trinkets. Crowds of people bustled to and fro, many of them wealthy nobles from the capital, who had traveled all the way to Jiangnan just to admire its famous water town scenery. When Yang closed her umbrella, and the servant behind her took it from her hand with a casual, practiced gesture, she wandered slowly along the street, looking at everything with childlike curiosity. Even though she had just eaten a large meal of hot pot, her stomach already felt empty. When she saw all the delicious street food on display, she could not resist the temptation to try a bite of everything. But there were so many different snacks that she knew she could never eat them all. She bought a pan-fried bun, took one small bite, then turned around and handed the rest to the servant behind her. Eat it. The servant said nothing. He simply lifted the mask covering the lower half of his face and ate the bun in a few quick bites. When Yang then bought a skewer of fried meat, she took one tiny bite, then handed the rest to him again. Next came crispy rice cakes, sweet osmanthus jelly, Jiangnan-style roast chicken, braised pork belly in soy sauce, spicy river snails, and stir-fried crayfish in oil. When Yang took only a small bite of each dish, just enough to taste it without filling her stomach, but the servant who followed her was not so lucky. Because of her repeated orders to eat it, he dared not waste a single bite. He ate every last thing she handed him, until his stomach was completely full. By the time when Yang had finished exploring the entire street, she was feeling tired. She turned to the servant and said, "Carry me." The servant obeyed without hesitation. He quickly stepped forward, knelt down in front of her, and let her climb onto his back. Wen Yang yawned sleepily, then rested her head on his shoulder and closed her eyes, falling into a deep sleep almost immediately. Before she drifted off completely, she murmured, "Don't go back yet. Keep walking with me until it gets dark." The moon hung bright and clear in the night sky, the stars twinkling faintly like scattered diamonds. Xiao Mingyu carried Wen Yang on his back. Walking steadily along the quiet streets of Jiangnan, a faint sheen of sweat covered his forehead, and his breathing was slightly labored. Droplets of sweat trickled down his face, soaking through his clothes and leaving large damp patches on the fabric. To make sure that Wen Yang would not feel uncomfortable, he had placed a thin layer of cotton between her body and his back. First, to keep his sweat from making her wet. Second, to make her sleep more comfortably, despite his exhaustion. His steps remained steady and sure. When they finally returned to the Lu mansion, Xiao Mingyu carefully laid Wen Yang down on her bed with the help of a maid, but the moment he set her down gently, he turned and rushed to the latrine, where he emptied the contents of his overfull stomach into the toilet. Feeling nauseous and dizzy, it took him a long time to recover. When he finally came out of the latrine, Lu Sheng was waiting for him outside. Lu Sheng smiled at him, his eyes twinkling with amusement. "Tired? Want to go for another walk? Very well." Xiao Mingyu clasped his hands behind his back. The moment he laid eyes on Lu Sheng, the nausea and stomachache that had plagued him vanished without a trace, replaced by his inherent regal aura. During the day, when Xiao Mingyu had accompanied Wen Yang on her shopping trip, Lu Sheng had sent servants to follow them discreetly. Even when he had gone out for a walk at dusk, his stomach full of lamb, Lu Sheng had followed him the entire way. Watching Xiao Mingyu's gentle, attentive demeanor around Wen Yang, it was hard to believe he was the same man exuding such noble bearing now. It was like looking at two completely different people. Who would have thought, who would have dared to imagine, that the emperor of the Great Jew would be willing to abandon his throne, his kingdom, his status as the supreme ruler of the world, all for the sake of one woman? The Lu family garden was vast and lush with vegetation. Lu Sheng walked ahead of him, saying, "Look at the flowers in this garden. Before Yang came to Jiangnan, I hired the most famous gardeners in the region to plant them. I heard from her mother that Yang loves kapok flowers, so I filled this courtyard with them. In spring, the entire yard is ablaze with orange-red blossoms. In summer, the trees are covered with dense green leaves, casting a cool shade over the courtyard." Later, even though she saw all sorts of delicate, vibrant flowers in the imperial palace, tulips, peonies, Chinese roses, she still loved kapok the most. She has always been like her father and her brothers in that way. Once she loves something, she never changes her mind. That is why, when she entered the palace, even though she was confined to a place as cold and lonely as the imperial harem for 3 long years, I know she never once regretted it. Xiao Mingyu pressed his lips together tightly, a troubled look crossing his face. Lu Sheng noticed his expression and smiled faintly. "You have been following us ever since I brought Yang back to Jiangnan. You even risked your life to protect her from danger. For that reason, I think you are a man of true courage and integrity, a man who can take up the reins of power and let them go just as easily. But I am not so sure about your approach to love. Those bandits on the road, they were never a match for someone of your skill. You deliberately took that knife wound to your body, didn't you? You wanted to atone for your sins. You wanted to trade your life for forgiveness, thinking that would make you less indebted to her." A sharp jolt of shock ran through Xiao Mingyu's heart. Lu Sheng had seen right through him. "That is why I saved your life and brought you back with us. I could not bear to leave Yang to suffer alone for the rest of her life. I knew she needed someone to take care of her, to stay by her side. She is covered in scars, both physical and emotional. If you truly wish her well, you will understand the sincerity behind my words today. Now, if you will excuse me, I think Yang will be in pain again soon." It was summer during Jiangnan's rainy season. The air was thick with humidity, heavy with moisture. Even with the best medicinal treatments available, Wen Yang still suffered from discomfort every night when she tried to sleep. Xiao Mingyu bowed deeply to Lu Sheng, his voice filled with gratitude and resolve. "From the moment I learned the full truth of what happened, I knew exactly what I had to do. I once acted foolishly, blinded by my own pride and mistakes. I am consumed by remorse. All I wish for now is to spend the rest of my days by the side of the woman I have wronged so deeply. Thank you for your guidance, Lord Lu. I shall remember your words forever." With that, Xiao Mingyu turned and strode quickly toward the backyard, toward Wen Yang's courtyard. Inside the courtyard, the maids and servants were already waiting for him, their faces filled with worry. "There you are at last, master. The young lady is crying out in pain again. What should we do? Should we use the same method as before?" Xiao Mingyu did not reply. His eyes fell on the bucket of ice water that had been prepared nearby. Without a word, he removed his outer robe, then climbed into the bucket, submerging his body in the freezing cold water. Within moments, a chill had spread to his very bones, making his eyebrows frost over with cold. A short while later, Xiao Mingyu climbed out of the ice bucket, changed into a clean set of clothes, and then entered Wen Yang's room. Inside, Wen Yang's cries of pain had finally subsided a little. This was Xiao Mingyu's method. The summer heat and humidity were unbearable. They lit a stove in the room to drive away the dampness, but to keep Wen Yang from feeling too hot, Xiao Mingyu used his own body as a medium, absorbing the cold from the ice water to bring her a cool, soothing relief. But no ordinary person can stand being submerged in ice water like this every day. One of the maids whispered worriedly, "It's true. How can a human being endure this? First the ice bucket, then the scorching hot stove. Even firewood would not hold up under such extreme conditions." The servants murmured among themselves, their voices filled with concern. Outside the door, Prince Jinkang and Lu Shong stood watching, not daring to go in and disturb them. Prince Jinkang smiled and said, "I think you, as her grandfather, should give Xiao Mingyu a proper status. Otherwise, it will not be good for Yang's reputation to have him staying here like this." Lu Shong let out a derisive snort. "I knew you were a man of old-fashioned ideas. I think things are perfect just the way they are. He is willing to be her humble servant, and she is willing to pretend to have lost her memory. Why should we pierce this delicate veil? As long as Yang is happy, I do not care about her so-called reputation." Prince Jinkang's eyes widened in shock. "Did you say she is pretending to have lost her memory?" Lu Shong raised an eyebrow, a knowing smile playing on his lips.